Chapter 781 is surging. The next day. The sun was shining brightly, and the sea breeze was blowing, and the entire Marin Vando exuded a cool air. Warm eyes shine on everyone. There are still many people repairing the damaged Marin Vando. A big event happened yesterday, do you know? The whole day, it shocked Marin Vando. You said, wouldn't I know about this? Yeah, the Warring States Marshal is about to retire. Now, the two generals who are vying for the position of the Marshal should also start their battle. Who will be the final winner? Who knows? General Sakaski and General Kuzan, who can become a general? In my opinion, I hope General Kuzan can become a general. Shut up, let's not discuss these topics. I'm afraid we're going to get into trouble. Quote. A group of Navy soldiers lowered their voices and talked. They all knew about the battle between Akainu and Aokiji. Just yesterday, after the meeting, this news will also cover the entire Marin Vatican. It's not a secret thing anymore. In the battle between Akainu and Aokiji, the final winner will become the Marshal, which is understandable. Basically no one would object to such a campaign. Who is stronger, who becomes the Marshal, and what is the objection? Whoever has the bigger fist has the last word. However, this news was confined to the interior of the Navy headquarters and did not spread. If it spreads out, I am afraid that the sea will shake. The battle between generals and generals is rare at this level. In particular, the two obviously have to do their best to run for the position of Marshal. If you don't want to give up the position of the Marshal, you must go all out, and the battle for the purpose of killing the opponent is the most intense. If you are soft-hearted and kind-hearted, you might as well just admit defeat. Of course. The strength of the two is similar, and they are not soft persimmons. It will be difficult to really kill each other. Unless you are exhausted at the end of the fight, and there is a winner, it will become easier to kill the loser. But with the referee situation, this kind of thing can be avoided. This time, in the battle between the two generals, there was the intervention of the referee. The referee, even General Huang Yuan, I don't think it's inappropriate. But who knows, Marshal Liang actually hired a monster like Liang as a referee. This time, even if we want to object, there is no reason to object. At present, it is indeed the monster Liang who is the most suitable referee. He will not favor either side, and he has enough strength to curb any side's murderous intentions against the other side. Quote. The entire Marin Vatican was boiling. Everyone expressed deep expectation and curiosity about the next battle. There are also many people who have raised the banner of support. Some people choose to support Akainu, and some people support Aokiji. There are a lot of people on both sides. Of course, if you really want to count, the people who support Aokiji are one half more than those who support Akainu. There is no other reason. Akainu is too strict, treats his subordinates, and does not treat his subordinates' lives as human beings. When necessary, you can use the life of your subordinates as bait. In this case, many people do not want Akainu to be the Marshal. Chapter 781 is surging. In this case, many people do not want Akainu to be the Marshal. They are very afraid. After Akainu becomes the Marshal, what kind of changes will it bring to the Navy headquarters? In particular, those who used to go out with Akainu on missions, they are even more afraid to support Akainu. There have been many people who have witnessed the scenes of Akainu killing ordinary people, which really violated their view of justice in their hearts. In the words of Akainu, it is just for the sake of justice, and it is understandable that there are fewer ordinary people. In his view, the people he saved were obviously more. There's nothing wrong with using pure numbers. Losing a few and gaining more numbers is definitely a gain. However, everyone has their own life. If you use numbers to calculate, it will be a bit dehumanizing. Moreover, no one can decide other people's lives, especially as Akainu of the Navy. He has no right to decide for others, to judge other people's lives, in order to save more people. These are all just wishful thinking of Akainu, and it can also be considered that it is his own idea. Hopefully, Admiral Aokiji can win. Go away. I hope General Akainu will win, so, won't we kill all the pirates in the sea? Pirates, they all deserve to be damned. 0 katakana middle dot 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 0. If Admiral Aokiji becomes the marshal, then we will become weaker and weaker in the future. With such a weak temperament as Admiral Aochi, do you still expect to be able to lead strong soldiers? Quote. There are many opinions, and everyone has different people in their hearts. Some people think that Aokiji's character is more suitable for managing the naval headquarters. But some people retorted that Aokiji is too weak, and if he manages the naval headquarters, it will not cause any deterrence to pirates in the future. In these many discussions, Marin fandom became more and more lively and noisy. It's not even surprising that some people fight for the sake of talking. 0. For these things, the personnel at the top of the Navy did not stop it. Perhaps it was they who thought it was not necessary. After a few days, the results appeared, and naturally everyone would shut up. And now is not the time to suppress these people. Suppressing their right to talk at this time will only be counterproductive, causing more people to feel dissatisfied with the Navy headquarters. While everyone was talking, time passed very quickly. Most lieutenant generals are looking forward to the outbreak of the war and the result. The people supported by each lieutenant general are different, and some are neutral. However, they all agree and look forward to the results. Otherwise, the infighting of the Navy headquarters, I am afraid that it will still stalemate. This is not a good thing for the entire Navy headquarters. These infighting matters must be dealt with as soon as possible. Let the infighting continue, and the infighting will escalate. It's okay now, it's a battle between the two generals. If the battle between the two generals is unsuccessful, it will gradually escalate into the battle of some lieutenant generals, colonels and others below. In order to support a certain general to become a marshal, these people can be considered to have exhausted all their strength to win a higher chance for the general they support. Moreover, there are still people who are already secretly taking action. Why act? Naturally, it is for the generals they support to be prepared for a surefire plan. The entire Marin fandom is undercurrent. Chapter 782 _ each has his own mind. Inside a secret room of Marin fandom, several lieutenant generals moved closer together, the atmosphere was depressed, and no one spoke first. A long time. A lieutenant general with a knife said, "How? Is there a plan?" The sun shines in, revealing a familiar face. At first glance, he is actually a flying squirrel. And beside the flying squirrel, there are Lieutenant General Huo Shaoshan and Lieutenant General Dalmesia. The three of them gathered together in a depressing conversation. If we really want to fight, I think the chance of losing Admiral Aokiji will be higher. The attributes of the fruit are not the opponent of Admiral Akainu. Flying Squirrel's face was calm, and he spoke slowly. If Akainu becomes the marshal, I can't imagine that picture. What a harsh battlefield will the Navy headquarters become. With Akainu's character, it's really uneasy. Huo Shaoshan smoked a cigarette, narrowed his eyes, and said slowly. The belief he upholds is similar to that of Aokiji. 390s. For people with extreme beliefs like Akainu, it is natural to not compliment them. If they could, they would prefer to see Aokiji become the marshal rather than Akainu. As the marshal of Akainu, I am afraid that those who support Aokiji will definitely be suppressed. Although not terribly obvious, these conditions definitely occur. But if they are indifferent and do nothing, they believe that the possibility of Aokiji defeat is significantly higher. In this regard, they did not hesitate to take precautions. There must be a solution to the current predicament. So, are you going to find the monster Liang? Dalmisia asked in a low voice, wearing a dog's headgear. When it comes to Liang, the three present were silent for a while. Will this monster really understand their troubles? However, they were not confident enough to persuade Liang. The three gathered here with the same goal. Most of the lieutenant generals didn't choose to do some small tricks behind their backs, but for the future of the Navy headquarters and for Aokiji to successfully become a general, it was considered a sacrifice. Since it's all decided, let's go to Liang. Hope, I can see a glimmer of hope from him. Even if I am shamed and ridiculed, I will not regret it. Huo Shaoshan said lightly with a smile on his face. Having said that, the three of them nodded, and they had an accurate idea in their hearts. Immediately, they moved in the direction of Liang's residence. At the same time, in a room not far away, Akainu was expressionless, sitting on a chair and looking directly at the four lieutenant generals in front of him. These old subordinates had supported him from the very beginning. Among them, there are Ghost Spider, Doberman, Bastiu and others. A group of 5 people are in the room. The atmosphere was extremely strange, with a chilling air. This time, I'm bound to win the position of marshal. Akainu looked expressionless, looking at the 4 lieutenant generals in front of him, said. He personally organized the manpower and wanted to do something within his power. Although he believes that this time the position of the marshal is already within reach. However, in order to ensure an accident, he must be prepared with both hands. How to prepare? There is only one person to start with, and this person is Liang. General Sakazuki, what do you want us to do? Ghost Spider looked at Akainu, took a deep breath, and asked. There are some things that I am inconvenient to come forward with, so I can only see the 4 of you. Akainu looked at the 4 lieutenant generals and said slowly, if I go out to do this, not only will it not succeed. Maybe it will cause unnecessary trouble. Chapter 782 Everyone has their own thoughts. Akainu looked at the 4 lieutenant generals and said slowly, if I go out to do this, not only will it not succeed. Maybe it will cause unnecessary trouble. The most important thing is that people are watching my whereabouts now. If I go to see Liang rashly, I will definitely be suspected. I believe that Qingzi also dare not look for Liang during this time. However, he may use the power of the lieutenant general to talk with Liang. In this way, we will be at a disadvantage. I hope that you can go to Liang instead of me. Akainu's face was heavy and serious. If it was him who went out in person, I am afraid that people would notice the clues. In order to avoid this situation, he must use other people and let other people talk instead of him. As a general, he is about to fight Aokiji. Before that, the whereabouts will definitely be watched by countless people. Warring states, Karp and others are 100% paying attention to his every move. If he finds Liang, it will naturally cause a lot of suspicion. In this way, even if he wins, he will be considered by others, and the victory will not be possible. Most people will think that he and Liang are involved in a transaction. Looking for Liang. The Ghost Spider muttered, and his face became serious. That's right. Akainu nodded, find Liang and make a promise. If you can convince him, it's the best. But if you can't convince him, you have to give him a certain price and let him refuse to help Aokiji Zero. I think he will agree. Finished talking. Several lieutenants also nodded. Possibly, Liang won't help anyone. However, it is enough to ensure that Liang will not help Aokiji and thus deal with Akainu. To defeat the enemy with absolute strength, Akainu will never be afraid. He is also confident that he has the strength to defeat Aokiji. Therefore, it is enough to prevent the personnel from Aokiji's side from making some small moves. One-on-one, Akainu has never been afraid of Aokiji. Of course, Aokiji may not be afraid of him. However, the strength of the two is similar, and it is still unknown which is stronger or weaker. In terms of attributes, Akainu has the advantage, but it does not necessarily mean that he will definitely be able to defeat Aokiji. The result of this level of battle is unknown. Even if there is a real gap between the two, when the battle is really fought, the result is impossible to guarantee. The battle depends not only on the strength of the individual, but also on luck, environment, etc. The combination of many factors is the key point that leads to victory or defeat. This is based on the fact that both sides have similar strengths. If the difference in strength is too great, it is inevitable that if they play against people of Liang's level, they naturally don't have to consider these issues of luck. Because luck is something that is dispensable to them. Even if they have great luck, it is impossible to defeat Liang. Liang has the ability to crush them with absolute strength. Both of them are generals, both of them have some understanding of each other's actual 2.5 power. It is impossible for anyone on either side to crush the other. At this time, some small actions, or things such as luck and environment, will interfere with the final result of their battle. Go ahead, promise some price. It doesn't need to be too exaggerated, but it can't be perfunctory. No matter how bad it is, Bailey is a good thing, and no one cares about getting more Bailey. You understand. Akainu looked at the few confidants in front of him and said. Understood. The 4 ghost spiders nodded solemnly and understood. They naturally understood what Akainu meant. Immediately. Under the meaning of Akainu, they gradually left the small house and approached Liang's residence. The position of marshal, I must get it. Akainu looked at the backs of several people, his face twisted, and his heart was very firm. Chapter 783 _ The support of the 5 old stars. Even though Akainu admits that his relationship with Liang is not that good. However, in order to compete for the position of marshal, he can be considered a sacrifice. In any case, as long as there is a chance, he is willing to try it. In particular, to prevent these guys from Aokiji, make some small moves. Since he thought of these things himself, he thought that the other party would definitely be able to think of it. At that time, no matter how bad it is, it will be enough for Liang to remain neutral. All he did was to prevent the success of Aokiji and their little tricks. If Aokiji and the others hadn't made these little moves, it would have been even more beneficial to him. Aokiji, you've never beaten me. This time, you still want to beat me. Go ahead and dream of your day. I'm stronger than you. Akainu's face twisted, and his heart roared. For the position of marshal, he paid a lot of price. Boo boo. Suddenly, the phone bug rang. I'm Akainu. Akainu restrained a little and said lightly. 08 of the phone bug, a frivolous voice came out. Akainu, how is the thing I asked you to do recently? I am competing for the position of marshal, and it will be soon. With your support, I will not let you down. The position of marshal belongs to me, and no one else is qualified to compete with me. Akainu's face was calm and he said confidently. The person opposite the phone bug is naturally the real ruler of the world government, the 5 old stars. That's right. It is with the support of the 5 old stars that he can compete with Qingzi for the position of marshal. Otherwise, with the introduction of warring states, Karp and others, I am afraid that at least he will not be as easy as now, and will eventually become a one-on-one competition with Aokiji. In all of this, the shadow of the 5 old stars is influencing the changes in the overall situation. Otherwise, there will be many chances, Aokiji will be able to take the position of marshal. For example, when voting. At that time, it was also the most thrilling time for him. Aokiji crushed him to death with an absolute number of votes. In the end, fortunately, the people from the 5 old stars came and stopped the voting at that time. It was because of this that he was able to take his breath away and continue to compete for the position of marshal. The position of the marshal must be yours. After becoming a marshal, I will help you with your affairs as soon as possible. This is the best way. You have to understand that if you can become a marshal and who is helping you, that's enough. I believe that your brain is very smart, and you won't do something unpleasant. Quote. After hanging up the phone bug, Akainu was silent for a while, his face gloomy and uncertain. Arranged like a dog by the 5 old stars. This kind of thing is not his Sakaski's character. Now, he must rely on the 5 old stars, but if he successfully becomes a marshal, everything will be reshuffled. Wait, you want me to fight for you as a docile dog? You think too well. When I become a marshal, you will know what kind of characters you support. Akainu grinned, looking very gloomy. Docile. This word had never existed in his mind at all. No matter who it is, don't want him to obey orders safely. Even if it is, the world government and even the 5 old stars will not be an exception. He is not the Warring States period, and he cannot be as weak as the Warring States period. Chapter 783 _ the support of the 5 old stars. He is not the Warring States period, and he cannot be as weak as the Warring States period. Yes. In his opinion, the Warring States period is quite weak. Moreover, Aokiji is also very cowardly. Besides him, who else can be qualified for the position of marshal? He has never considered these, and he believes that he is the most suitable candidate to be a marshal. As for the others, whether it was the Warring States period or the Aokiji, in his eyes, he did not think that the other party was a qualified marshal or candidate for marshal. If you do not kill decisively, how can you control the overall situation? If you want to kill pirates, if you want to pacify this whole sea area, you will naturally have to stain your hands with blood. If you don't even dare to kill, then you still want to be a marshal. Especially the soft-footed shrimp Chingzi. If he is a marshal, what future does the Navy headquarters have? Could it be that the entire Navy headquarters is as weak as him? It's just a joke. If you let me control the naval headquarters, these things will naturally not happen. So, Aokiji, you should step back obediently. I will never let go of this battle. If you die, you will only die in vain. In battle, no one can save you in an instant. Without your naval headquarters, you will be more obedient. Quote. Akainu's laughter grew wilder, echoing throughout the room. His face also changed constantly, from crazy to almost crazy. The laughter disappeared, wandering around. Anyone who passed by felt a terrifying force that was palpitating and drifted out of the room. Whether it's the Warring States period or Carp, the Aokiji you support is nothing more than my defeat. This result is destined to disappoint you. Sakaski, is the real marshal. Akainu rolled the magma in both hands and fell to the ground, bringing a burst of hot magma. Noisy. The entire floor was corroded by magma, and there were pits that collapsed. The temperature skyrocketed, and the entire room was filled with hot air. My devil fruit just restrains him. And my physical strength and domineering in all aspects are a bit higher than his. So, if nothing else, I will become a marshal, and it is already a nail in the coffin. 587 Akainu narrowed his eyes slightly and fell into thought. The attributes are mutually exclusive, and he has absolute certainty to destroy the green pheasant. But tactical issues still have to be studied. In case Chingzi comes with a sudden attack, if he does not follow the way he imagined, if he loses, it will be too wrong. You have to be prepared for everything. One-on-one, I've never been afraid of him, but to prevent some accidents, I still have to be 12 points of energy. Prepare and meet his battle. The corner of Akainu's mouth moved slightly and said slowly. He stared out the window, lost in thought, and did not speak. I hope that the trip of Ghost Spider and others will go well. When he thought that Chingzi might bribe Liang, he felt anxious for a while. One-on-one, he is not afraid of each other. But the fear is that if Liang is bribed and swayed by it, won't he lose? It is already very difficult to fight a green pheasant, not to mention that Liang, who is the referee, may launch some secret attacks on him. If so, there is no suspense in this battle. He will lose terribly. Definitely, stop it. The corners of Akainu's mouth moved slightly, and he whispered. just looking forward to whether the group of ghost spiders can succeed. And he is not convenient to come forward. Can only wait. In 2 days, rush to the new world. Chapter 784 _ Actions. The sun rises at noon. The sun shines down. Dong dong dong. The door was knocked, very crisp, and the frequency was very peaceful. Liang looked calm, stood up from the sofa, walked to the gate, and opened the gate. I see. Flying Squirrel and Huo Shaoshan stood in front of the door. You came to see me. Liang's face was calm, he stretched out his hands, and asked. He couldn't imagine why the Flying Squirrel and others were looking for him. Mr. Liang, I'm sorry to bother you. Flying Squirrel looked restrained and a little nervous, said. What's the matter? Liang got straight to the point and asked directly. He doesn't like playing quizzes with these people, isn't this a pure waste of time? Talking about something is the easiest way. It's a little inconvenient here. The Flying Squirt coughed dryly, glanced at the surrounding environment vigilantly, and lowered his voice. Come in then. Liang didn't care either. It just so happened that Hancock hadn't woken up yet, so it wasn't a big problem for these people to come in and sit for a while. Looking at the empty surroundings, he said slowly, There's nothing to entertain you, don't worry about it. Don't dare. Flying Squirrel hurriedly said. Just kidding, he dares to let Liang entertain. This time, I came here for a purpose, not just to let Liang entertain him. Their task is daunting, at least, that's what they think. Sit wherever you want. Liang waved his hand, lying on the sofa alone, said. Even though they said so, the Flying Squirrel and the others looked cautious and did not dare to sit down. They still maintained a standing posture, which seemed very respectful and nervous. Tell me, why are you here looking for me? Liang continued to ask, his face was calm. We came here to find Mr. Liang to ask you to do something for us. The Flying Skier hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth, and said. What's the matter? Liang didn't care about the postures of several people and asked. I would like to ask you to take care of Admiral Aokiji during the battle in the next 2 days. After the Flying Squirrel said these words, the sophistication turned red like a fire. In the final analysis, he is also an upright navy. After doing these things, his mood is naturally indescribable. Shame, of course. Like, a violation of the duty of the navy. Actually, he made these small actions behind his back, so it was difficult for him to open his mouth and he couldn't speak. You guys, are you here for Aokiji? Liang said with a calm face. Yes, in order for General Qingzi to become a marshal smoothly, even if we come here, we will be full of controversy and will not hesitate. Even if we will be scolded and scolded, we will recognize it. Huo Shaoshan took a deep breath and nodded. Isn't Aokiji asking you to come? Liang said with a smile. General Aokiji, completely ignorant. Huo Shaoshan shook his head and did not involve Qingzi in this matter. With Aokiji's character, he really wouldn't do such a thing. In other words, he never thought about doing such a thing at all. Thought here. Chapter 784 _ Actions. Thought here. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly, feeling a little interested, and said again, You guys, what do you want me to do? He really wanted to hear what these people thought. Of course. Since he has promised the Warring States period, naturally, he will not interfere in this battle. Unless, when death is about to appear, he will do it. However, if it was these people's bribes, he would naturally be indifferent. What kind of conditions can't bribe him? You know, the conditions for bribing him are still relatively difficult. Although I know that this condition may be disdainful for you to do it at all. However, I still hope that you can understand the feelings of us people. If Admiral Akainu is used as the marshal, I think our naval headquarters will really get into a lot of trouble. Especially, with Admiral Akainu's character, I worry that people's impression of the Navy will be completely changed in the future. Only General Qingzi is the most suitable candidate for the marshal. Huo Shaoshan said very sincerely. Just stop for a while. Li Ang waved his hand and said bluntly, these things, you should talk to the warring states period, not tell me. What you said about the Navy headquarters has nothing to do with me. I don't need to do this for you. Kind of thing. Yes. Huo Shaoshan smiled bitterly, which was reasonable. Where can you convince Li Ang with such a simple answer? If it was really that simple, if Li Ang was persuaded, he would have doubts himself. After all, a monster like Li Ang would really agree to their request so easily. Naturally, they didn't think it would be that simple. Without cost, even if Li Ang was invited, they would think that the other party was perfunctory. Do you do this, warring states? No. Li Ang looked calm, looked at the lieutenant generals, and asked. The warring states marshal was also unaware. The flying squirrel shook his head and said bluntly. Since he's not worried, what are you worried about? Li Ang leaned back on the sofa, lying on the sofa, and said lightly, the warring states all want a fair and just duel, what's the point of you worrying about it? Besides, if you want me to help Aokiji, unless you can kill Akainu, otherwise, he will surely find out. I can't do it, so that Akainu doesn't even notice me doing it. That is to say, if you want me to help, and it won't attract attention. Then, the price is Akainu's death. Speaking of this, do you still insist on what you think in your heart? Li Ang looked directly at the three lieutenant generals, Huo Shaoshan and Flying Squirrel, and continued. Heard. This. Flying Squirrel was speechless for a while, opened his mouth, but still didn't say anything. If the price is the loss of a general, then he will not be able to speak. Any general, for the Navy headquarters, is a huge force. The loss of any general is still very traumatic to the headquarters of the Hai Denuo Zhao army. If the price of letting Aokiji become the marshal was to let General Akainu die, they wouldn't dare to continue talking. So, your thoughts only exist in your imagination. I can't intervene in it, unless I want to let the other party die, I can intervene. But, is it really what you want to let a general die? Li Ang's mouth moved slightly and said. We didn't know that would be the case. The flying squirrel sighed and shook his head. Let a general die, such words, they still dare not speak. But if they do nothing, they still can't feel at ease. After all, the fruit attributes of Akainu and Aokiji are diametrically opposite, and they are also very clear in their hearts that the person with the highest chance of winning the battle between the two is Akainu. In the final analysis, it's just their hearts. They don't want Akainu to become a marshal, they don't really want to kill Akainu. Chapter 785-price. Killing Akainu had a huge impact. They didn't dare, except that they didn't have the guts, they didn't want to see Akainu's death in their hearts. It will cause enormous trauma to the Navy headquarters. Even, it may not be impossible for a group of pirates to enter. Furthermore, if you want me to help, what price can you promise? You know, the price is not easy to deal with a general. Li Ang laughed, his eyes twinkled, and said. The warring states period also gave him a lot of price to invite him as a referee. If you want him to help Aokiji, it must be higher than the conditions given by the warring states period, and then he may make a move. But can Flying Squirrels, Huo Shaoshan and others really give these conditions? Without the support of the warring states period and Qingzi, they hurriedly found Li Ang, and the price they paid naturally had to be borne by themselves. This. Huo Shaoshan also had nothing to say. Cost. What price can they pay? The price of being able to attract Li Ang is not something that people like them can reach. And everything they have can't be used as a price to ask Li Ang to help them do one thing. So, you should think about all this before you come to me. Li Ang waved his hand, ready to see off. These lieutenant generals are obviously too impulsive, otherwise, they will definitely not say these words. It can be seen that they still have high hopes for Aokiji. Very urgent, I want to see the picture of Qingzi becoming a marshal, so I did these stupid things. If they think about it carefully, they will find that they want to bribe Liang, and they have no such price at all. Because behind them, there is no support from the Warring States period or Aokiji. Their greatest support is themselves. And they are just lieutenants. What I have come into contact with, what I have seen, and what I have are relatively shallow. It is still too difficult to attract Liang to do it at the cost of what they have. Are you going to give up like this? The flying squirrel was very unwilling in his heart, but he also felt a deep sense of helplessness. Besides being unwilling, what else is there to do? They can invite Liang at no cost, especially if Liang does it, he must kill Akainu. Admiral may really be Aokiji's AIDD. However, Akainu will also die forever and has nothing to do with the Navy headquarters. The loss of the general is the turmoil of the naval headquarters. They don't want to see this day coming, and they don't want those pirates to take advantage of it. For many reasons, they gradually dispelled their inner thoughts. When they calmed down and looked back, they realized just how idiots they were to come to Liang to talk about these things. But if Admiral Aokiji fails... Huo Shaoshan gritted his teeth, and was very unwilling in his heart. Aokiji was defeated, Akainu successfully became a marshal, and the naval headquarters would also undergo a large-scale reform. They can accept the reform, but what they cannot accept is the reform caused by extremists like Akainu. They believe that the impact must be huge. Some things are not for you to decide. Of course, I can change it, but why should I change it? Who becomes the marshal is not unexpected to me. Whether it's Aokiji or Akainu, whoever becomes the marshal has nothing to do with me, an outsider. Of course, my house is in Marin Vando. I just hope they don't take it back. Liang laughed and said bluntly. Chapter 785-price. Liang laughed and said bluntly. The house is naturally not impossible to recycle. This is the one who offended him, Akainu. Green Pheasant. The two of them didn't have the guts, even in the Warring States period. Mr. Liang, who do you think will win? Dalmisia looked hesitant and asked tentatively. Who wins? Liang laughed dumbly. If the guess is correct, Akainu has a significantly higher chance of winning. Aside from the ability of the devil fruit, perhaps the two will be evenly matched, and there will be no winner after a year and a half. However, you can also imagine. If the two of them leave the devil fruit aside, they will fight indistinctly. If you add the devil fruit's ability, it will be restrained. Aren't the results obvious? Finished talking. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and others fell silent. As Liang said, they also had some guesses in their hearts. However, from Liang's mouth, it still gave them a certain blow. Of course, I'm not talking about absolutes. Liang looked at the three people who looked lost and said with a smile, if you are restrained by your fruit ability, you will definitely lose. I don't think so. I can only say that Akainu has a relatively high chance of winning. And Aokiji also has the possibility of winning. But the odds are lower. Quote. Mr. Liang, is there no way to make General Qingzi a marshal? Dalmisia gritted her teeth and asked. Unless you can ask me to kill Akainu, this method is simple and straightforward. Moreover, there is a 100% chance that Aokiji can become a marshal. Liang shrugged and said slowly. Even if the red dog is exposed to the sun, he will not resist. It's just, at least, that he will kill the designated personnel if he has to pay him a price he thinks is worthwhile. If the price is not enough, he definitely doesn't want to shoot, it's just a waste of time. Is the price still not enough? Volcano burns with a bitter expression and a complicated mood. The price of asking Liang was still too high, so they couldn't even imagine it. Other than that, then I have nothing to do. Besides, I promised Warring States, as a fair and just referee, how can I be easily bribed by you? You know, you are in the Navy. If you do this kind of thing, if you are discovered, you will have a hard time in the future. You may even be fired. In a crowded environment like Marin Fando, your every move, in fact, will be seen by others. For example, the fact that you came to my residence. Quote. With a smile on his face, Li Ying continued to explain to several people. Hearing this, the expressions of Flying Squirrel and Huo Xiaoshan completely changed. Has it been discovered? Thinking of this, the two of them looked at each other and could see the solemnity in each other's eyes. If found, it would be somewhat intriguing. Of course. No one would associate them with Qingzi's head. Anyway, there was no evidence to prove what purpose they came to Li Ying's house for. As lieutenant generals, you have to rely on your brain to do things. Li Ying pointed to his temple and smiled. Teached. Flying Squirrel, Huo Xiaoshan, and Dalmizha nodded solemnly and said sincerely. Chapter 786 _ There are guests again. Flying Squirrel, Huo Xiaoshan, or Dalmizha are generally in their 40s, but they are taught by Li Ying, who is only in his 20s. The picture looks very funny. However, this world is not about age. The elders are respected. Li Ying's strength is stronger than them, and his natural identity is naturally more noble. Not to mention lieutenant generals like them, even the 60 to 70-year-old warring states, standing in front of Li Ying, would not dare to show their elders to lean on the old and sell the old. Age, here never, doesn't matter. What matters is who is stronger. A lot of people have found that you have come to me. In this case, if I help you again, I'm afraid it will backfire. Even if the green pheasant really wins, it will not be recognized by others. Li Yingblue was calm and continued. Many people found that the 3 lieutenant generals came here, which is not fake. When he returned to his residence, he noticed that many people were secretly monitoring the area where he lived. It may not be the manpower sent by the warring states. However, no matter which side it is, in a word, the news that is being secretly concerned about here has also been implemented, and there is no exaggeration. Therefore, he can be sure that the whereabouts of the 3 flying squirrels have long been discovered. Even those who secretly pay attention to here continue to spread the news. Although there is no evidence, the occurrence of such a thing will definitely have a great impact on the battle between the two. We were abrupt. Huo Xiaoshan opened his eyes and nodded with a bit of solemnity. They didn't expect it to be under surveillance for a long time. I thought that with Li Ying's ability, no one would dare to do such a thing. However, it turned out to be completely different from what they had imagined. Of course, their surveillance is only carried out with my approval. It's only a few days of surveillance time. Moreover, the surveillance is also several hundred meters away. They can only find out my house, the visitors these days. But they can't find out what happened in the room. So, you can rest assured that your words will not be found. Is there anything else that dares to monitor it to such a degree? Those who are monitoring them have a lot in their hearts. They won't do things that are beyond their ability. Li Ying's face was calm, still lying on the sofa, said. It is precisely because these people who are monitoring that he knows what to do that he allows these people to watch around. If these people hadn't been so disciplined, he would have let these people see blood, which would be good. Without touching his bottom line, he would not be in a hurry to eliminate these surveillance personnel. Of course. If he suddenly said something, threatening to kill all the people who were watching here, those people who were watching would definitely run faster than anyone else. But these are not necessary. He didn't think he had a ghost in his heart. In the past few days, I have been monitored for visitors, nothing more. We can rest assured. The flying squirrel exhaled heavily and said. As long as they don't get heard, what they're talking about is fine. Even if they found out that they really came to visit Li Ying, so what? Could it be that, as lieutenant generals, they are not even qualified to visit others? Although, it will cause some trouble, but always, there is no evidence to prove it, this is enough. 3. If you have nothing to do, please go back. Li Ying stretched his hands and said slowly. Mr. Li Ying, I would like to ask you one last thing. Huo Xiaoshan is very serious and respectfully said, trouble, please be sure to save the life of General Aokiji. I am worried that General Akainu will kill General Aokiji mercilessly. Why don't you give Aokiji a little confidence? He will definitely lose. I don't think so. Liang said with a calm face. I'm not afraid at 10,000, just in case. Huo Shaoshan hesitated for a moment and said. Chapter 786_another visitor. NGT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. Huo Shaoshan hesitated for a moment and said. Don't worry, this is my duty. Since I have promised to be the referee, I will definitely do my best so that neither of them will die. Liang smiled and said, I think I'm a relatively competent person. So, you don't have to worry about it. Unless, there really is a situation where you can't be rescued by being killed by one blow. Otherwise, I'm still confident enough to stop anyone from killing another. Finished talking. The flying squirrel, Huo Shaoshan, and Dalmisia also did not speak. Having said that, although their purpose has not been completed, they can rest assured. As long as the Aokiji general is not dead, their hearts will naturally not be so heavy. In their view, the possibility of General Aokiji's failure is still very high. 0. But to save lives, that's enough. Thank you. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan, and Dalmisia bowed solemnly and said. With Liang's assurance, they felt a lot more confident in their hearts. Even if you are defeated, as long as you are still alive, you still have a lot of power. It is not enough that the whole thing is reduced to a Kainu's pocket. At least it would be better for someone to compete with a Kainu. A single family is the last thing they want to see. No delivery. Liang didn't stand up, looked at the three and said. How dare you let Mr. Liang send each other? Today, although the goal has not been achieved, we are still very grateful to Mr. Liang. The flying skier shook his head and said. The goal was not achieved, but with Liang's assurance, their mood would not be too depressed. Let's go. Huo Shaoshan also sighed and said. In this way, the person with a bigger chance of winning is a Kainu. They are powerless to change this result. I can only pin all my hopes on Aokiji. Other than that, there is no other way. Wait. Suddenly, the corners of Liang's mouth twitched, and his words stopped the movement of the three. Mr. Liang, is there anything else to say? Dalmisia was stunned and asked. Outside, there are 4 guests. I think you should continue to stay here. These 4 guests have a common topic with you, so maybe it is. Liang said with a smile. He was keenly aware that there were 4 people standing outside the door. As expected. Dong dong dong. The door was knocked, and a crisp sound lingered around. 4 guests. Flying Squirrel and Huo Shaoshan looked at each other with suspicion. However, it was found that the 3 of them were all concentrated in Liang's house. It seemed that it was not a glorious thing. It's easy to be despised for doing such a small gesture. But now it doesn't matter if they get out. The door has been knocked, unless they escape from the window. But in this way, it will be easier for people to suspect that they have done something sneaky. Only honesty is the best. At least, even if others doubt, they will not doubt it too deeply. Chapter 787_coincidentally, everyone is here. Now that Liang has spoken, they naturally can only stay here. You guys, go and help me open the door. You'll be familiar with those who come here. Liang said with a smile. Seeing the domineering look, he directly detected 4 comers. Among them, there are a lot of familiar breaths, allowing him to directly infer the identities of these 4 people, and the purpose of these 4 people. If nothing else, these 4 people are similar to the 3 flying squirrels. It's just that the standpoints are different. Heard. Flying Squirrel and Huo Shaoshan's eyelids jumped, and they also had some guesses in their hearts. According to what Liang said, I'm afraid it's. I'll open the door. The flying skier took a deep breath and said. He walked to the gate step by step and opened the gate. Crunch. After the door was opened, what appeared in the eyes, 170, were those four familiar faces. In the meeting, I have seen countless faces. It's you. The people on both sides widened their eyes and lost their voices. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan, and Dalmisia pointed to the four standing at the gate. Their eyes widened and their lips trembled slightly, which was obviously unexpected. But anyway, the Flying Squirrel and Huo Shaoshan also have some guesses. Soon, they calmed down. And the person on the opposite side. Naturally, it is the four lieutenant generals headed by the ghost spider. In the same way, they saw the Flying Squirrel who opened the door for them in the room, as well as the three people of Huo Shaoshan and Dalmisia who were gradually approaching. Their pupils shrank and their faces changed dramatically. The opponent's movements are actually faster than theirs. In Li Ang's room, seeing these three people, they naturally thought of it for the first time in their hearts. The purpose of the other party, I am afraid, is the same as their own. Silence. The people on both sides stopped talking. Not far away. Li Ang was lying on the sofa, watching the meeting between the two sides. A meaningful smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This scene, he had expected. When countless people in Huo Shaoshan and others came to him at the same time, he guessed in his heart that the people on Akainu's side would naturally think of this matter. Therefore, it is reasonable for people on both sides to meet. Although Li Ang expected it. However, Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and others were completely unexpected. They had guesses in their hearts. Others will also act like me. But what they didn't expect was that it was such a coincidence that the two sides met. You guys, come here. Ghost Spider frowned, his tone was not good, and he said lightly. Within the Navy, there are still factions. Everyone's faction is different, the people they support are different, and many conflicts and frictions will erupt. Superficially. The lieutenant generals are all in harmony, but that is only the naval headquarters seen in the eyes of the outside world, united to fight against pirates. But in fact, the competition within the Navy is not weak. Although there will be no death, friction is inevitable. The competition is very fierce, and people from different factions will not have a good face when they meet. Do we still need to tell you when we are here? Chapter 787-coincidentally, everyone is here. Do we still need to tell you when we are here? Flying Squirrel said calmly without any good expression on his face. Since everyone is not pleasing to the eye, and also euphemistically false, he can't do this kind of thing. It is better that everyone open their hearts and talk straight to the point. You don't need to report it to me. But, I see you, your thoughts are not simple. If we hadn't bumped into it, I'm afraid that there will be some unknown transactions. The ghost spider said yin and yang strangely. What do you mean? Huo Shaoshan said with an expressionless face. Literally, isn't it? Behind the ghost spider, Doberman also spoke coldly. As soon as the two sides met, there was an atmosphere of fierce competition. Their friction and collision are not formed in a day or two. The contradictions have accumulated for a long time, and naturally they need to be vented, so as not to cause real trouble. If these contradictions cannot be vented, they will accumulate over time, and when they really break out, the people above will not be able to easily suppress them. Therefore, the above people also turn a blind eye to the friction between them. As long as there is no death, they are allowed to touch each other. It's best to have someone weigh it. If a faction develops to the strongest, it is the thing that those people above need to worry about. Now, there are two factions weighing each other, and it's a picture everyone wants to see. Especially for those in power, this is the best way to go. What about you? Are you here to greet Mr. Liang? I think your purpose is definitely not that simple. The flying skier also sneered and said. Our purpose, you don't need to intervene. Anyway, when we came here, we saw that you were going to leave. If it spreads out, you will be notorious. Doberman said with an expressionless face. You can try it. If you don't have evidence, don't talk nonsense. If you fabricate it randomly, it will lead to death. Don't you know? Then I'd like to see what the calamity is. Is it just your 3 little characters? You want to shake the 4 of us? Try it, we have nothing to fear. We'll be afraid that you won't make it. Just kidding. Quote. The 2 sides got into a dispute. Especially notice that Liang did not intervene. It made them unscrupulous, and the smell of gunpowder became stronger and stronger, and it seemed that a shocking war would break out at any time. The sword is drawn. The atmosphere was eerie, deadly silent. Both sides looked at each other angrily, and no one chose to take the lead. Each of them knew very well in their hearts that this was Liang's territory. Argue about it, the other party may not mind. However, if this place is to be turned into a battlefield, then how many lives they have will not be enough for Liang to kill. Everyone, it's a coincidence that everyone is here. At this time, the corner of Liang's mouth moved slightly, and he said 5.2 with a smile. He looked at the people on both sides of the flying squirrel and the ghost spider. His face was calm, and he did not favor either side, and he would not reprimand anyone on either side. Mr. Liang, come uninvited, please forgive me. The ghost spider took a deep breath, his face became respectful, and he lowered his head and said. In front of Liang, his arrogant demeanor will naturally subside. After all, the person in front of him was a terrifying monster that was even more evasive than their immediate boss, a kainu. In front of each other, at best, they are just a group of small shrimps. Standing behind the ghost spider, Doberman, and the other 2 lieutenant generals also bowed, expressing their respect for Liang. Now that they are here with Liang, if they maintain the indomitable attitude of the lieutenant general, then they really don't even know how to die. Chapter 788-Weird Atmosphere. Mr. Liang. Everyone invariably looked at Liang and said respectfully. Liang spoke, and they couldn't choose to continue scolding the street. The lieutenant general is also a lieutenant general, so it is enough to start a scolding battle. Now that Liang has spoken, if they continue to scold, I am afraid that Liang will also be dissatisfied. Enough is enough, and that's what they need to learn. In total, my small house has accommodated 7 lieutenant generals. I think this is definitely a relatively new thing. Liang was still sitting on the sofa, smiling and said slowly. All 7 were a little embarrassed. If it is a person from one side, who comes to Liang, there is still something to say. However, people on both sides are here, even if they have 1,000 words in their hearts, they can't open their mouths. Especially Ghost Spider and others, according to a Kainu's orders, they are all ready to pay the price. But who would have thought that they would encounter flying squirrels and other people belonging to the Aokiji faction here? This time, they dare not say all the costs. Therefore, the 7 people, very strange, fell into the silence of 08. All the words are held in the stomach, and they dare not speak again. Want to bribe Liang? If there are so many people here, it would be really troublesome if they were heard. Once the small actions become open and above board, the waves caused will not be too small. Why haven't you left? Ghost Spider glanced at the flying squirrel coldly, and said lightly, just now, didn't you want to leave? Why have you changed your mind now? I like it, can you handle it? Dalmisia sneered and said. You. Ghost Spider raised his brows and was about to get angry. Why, do you want to do it? You have to think carefully. This is Mr. Liang's house. You can't afford to damage this place. Dalmisia wore a dog head hood that covered her face. Just like the dog head that Carp is carrying, it looks a bit funny. With his burly body, showing a completely different contrast. This figure actually wears a dog's headgear, which makes people feel cute. Dalmisia, you just lost to me some time ago. I don't want to talk to my loser, you should stay where you want to stay cool. The Ghost Spider's pupils shrank, suppressed the anger in his heart, and sneered. On Liang's sight, he naturally did not dare to do it. Undoubtedly, he was causing trouble for himself. Even a Kainu would not dare to act rashly here. What kind of onion is he himself? Humph. Dalmesia snorted coldly, and her tone became extremely bad. However, he did not quibble. The matter of losing to the ghost spider is well known. His sophistry will only make people look down on him even more and think he can't afford to lose. Ghost spider, don't think about it. If you don't go, how can we go? It happened that we just remembered that there are still some things that need to be said to Mr. Liang. However, we have a deep sense of righteousness. Since we have met you, we will give you the time. After you have communicated with Mr. Liang first, let's talk about it. Huo Shaoshan narrowed his eyes and said slowly. Then we have to thank you. The blue veins on the ghost spider's forehead burst out, and it was obviously very gloomy. There is no need to thank you. Everyone is a colleague, and they are their own people. It would be too hurtful to talk about gratitude. You are right, Flying Squirrel. Huo Shaoshan waved his hand and smiled. Not really. Flying Squirrel continued to speak with a smile on his face. He and Huo Shaoshan and Dalmesia stood next to each other, looking at Ghost Spider and the other four to see what the other party would say. Under the gaze of the three of them, the Ghost Spider dared to talk nonsense. He took a deep breath, his face was very gloomy, and he did not open his mouth casually. Chapter 788-Weird Atmosphere. Under the gaze of the three of them, the Ghost Spider dared to talk nonsense. He took a deep breath, his face was very gloomy, and he did not open his mouth casually. If they were caught, it would be too serious if they wanted to bribe Liang. But if you don't speak, what do you say? Ghost Spider, Doberman and others were silent, not knowing how to speak. So, the atmosphere also became weird. No one spoke. Beside, Flying Squirrel and the others were all smiles, waiting to see the good show of Ghost Spider and the others. They did not speak, but watched silently. And Liang, always sitting on the sofa, did not show any signs of moving or speaking. Silence. Why, don't you have something to say? Flying Squirrel pretended to be puzzled and asked. Humph. Doberman snorted coldly and said nothing. They really want to talk, but with so many people here, it's not good for him to say anything. Is it straight to the point? Wouldn't that make it clear that they had received instructions from Akainu to come to bribe Liang? There are Flying Squirrels and others standing by, giving them 10 courage, they dare not say so. Looks like we're getting in your way, aren't we? Huo Shaoshan said with a smile, but don't worry, we will continue to hinder you. Hurry up, time waits for no one, and we also have something to tell Mr. Liang. Then let you go first. Ghost Spider frowned and said coldly. No, you should go first. Our business is not in a hurry. You seem to be in a hurry. Huo Shaoshan shook his head quickly and said. It's a coincidence. We're not in a hurry, you go first. Doberman continued. No, you should go first. Lieutenant General Huo Shaoshan, your seniority is relatively old. In order to show our respect for you, I think you have priority. So, you go first. 220. The people on both sides are constantly pushing away. No one wants to speak. But the Flying Squirrel and others did not say anything because they had nothing to say. Of course. Even if there is something to say, they can't say it in front of Ghost Spider and others. The factions on the two sides are different, and naturally it is impossible to expect anything to get along with each other. As for Ghost Spider and the others, even though there are countless things they want to say in their hearts. But under the eyes of Flying Squirrel and others, they did not dare to speak. So, the atmosphere fell silent for a while. Have you nothing to say? Liang suddenly looked at everyone and said lightly, if there is nothing to say, then everyone, please leave here. I don't have time, so I will continue to delay here with you. Wait a minute, Mr. Liang. Ghost Spider was nervous and gritted his teeth. He looked at the Flying Squirrel who was sneering and sneered, and his heart also followed with a bit of anxiety. From his point of view, it was obvious that Flying Squirrel and others had successfully achieved their goal. In this case, it will be quite unfavorable to the Akainu they support. If you don't say it, you have no chance to say it. But next to him stood Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan, and others. Before he wanted to speak, he had to weigh himself up. Go ahead, Li Ang said with a smile. However, the ghost spider faltered and was completely unable to express what he wanted to express. Chapter 789-Fair and Just. Forget it. Li Ang waved his hand, and when he saw the ghost spider, he felt bored. I thought that the ghost spider would speak out boldly. But obviously, the contrary, the ghost spider does not have the ability to say these words. Of course. If he did it as a ghost spider, he would not dare to say such a thing. This will ruin his future, and it will also make Akainu suffer from infamy. These things are not something that ghost spider can undertake alone. I know what you're here for. Li Ang looked at the ghost spider and said, you don't need to say it, I know what you are here for. However, I can give you an accurate answer. Ghost spider finally breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Li Ang. The same is true of the 3 lieutenant generals including Doberman behind him. They had never been so nervous before. But today, it really makes them nervous. Including you. Li Ang said slowly while playing with the flying squirrel and others next to him. Are they in, too? Ghost Spider's heart tightened, thinking so. The flying squirrel and others are the source of their fear. The other party came earlier than them, and it was obvious that they seemed to be talking quite harmoniously. In his view, this is also relatively harmonious. I know the purpose of each of you. Besides, I'm not hiding it anymore. You all have the same purpose. I can be sure, and you don't need to deny it. Li Ang looked at everyone present and continued. But those who are watched by his eyes are not conscious and dare not look directly. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan, Ghost Spider and others couldn't help feeling a little timid. They didn't refute, because they all knew the real reason why the other party came to Li Ang. We all know that our goals are the same. Different, only the position is different. I'm here to give you a unified answer. Don't expect these small actions. I'm not going to do some unfair things for a little benefit. Li Ang's face was calm and he said slowly. Heard. The flying squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and others had calm expressions, which they had expected. The ghost spider, although a little disappointed, was still relieved. As long as they are not partial to any party, then they can accept it. They still trust the strength of General Akainu in their hearts. Warring States made me the referee, and he also spent a lot of money. And if you still want to start with me, I can only tell you that you made the wrong idea. I'm not going to help either side. I'm responsible for what the referee needs to do. For example, when someone is going to die, pull him. Besides that, I will never interfere in the rest of the battle process. You don't have to hit me with your thoughts. I can clearly say that I am not partial to anyone. No one wants me to be biased. I will try my best to be fair and just. I won't let others participate in the battle between the two, and I will not allow others to log into that island. As for the outcome of the battle between the two, it depends on the two of them. Down with these words. The flying squirrel and the others were silent for a while. They didn't have much confidence in their hearts, thinking that Aokiji could win. But anyway, there is no result yet, and they still have a lot of hope in their hearts. That's enough. The ghost spider exhaled heavily, and a smile appeared on his face. As long as it is fair and just one-on-one, then they can be considered to have completed the task. Chapter 789-Fair and Just. As long as it is fair and just one-on-one, then they can be considered to have completed the task. Of course, it would be best if Li Ang could be bribed. But they can't be bribed. As long as there is a fair and just decisive battle, they are not too disappointed. It turns out that the flying squirrels and the others did not succeed either. Doberman glanced at Flying Squirrel and the others, and was relieved, thinking to himself. Combining everything just now in Li Ang's words, they all realized it in their hearts. The flying squirrel and others have the same purpose as them. However, the result remains the same: they did not succeed, and neither did the other. So, the battle will continue. And this battle is purely a fair and just battle, and will not be mixed with other small actions. Obviously, according to Li Eng's words, small movements will not be allowed to interfere in this decisive battle between the two. Mr. Li Eng, it really is a promise, which is admirable. The ghost spider smiled and flattered. He could finally relax. Since Li Eng does not take sides, as the strong faction Akainu, they will naturally not worry too much about the outcome of the battle. They all agreed that Akainu will definitely be able to defeat Aokiji. But Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and others don't have such strong beliefs as them. Trust is naturally necessary, but blind trust is not desirable. Judging from the situation on the surface, it is obvious that Aokiji is the disadvantage, and Akainu has an advantage. Don't be flattering, I'm just telling you the truth, so that you don't bother me every day. I told you frankly today that you don't need to find me these 2 days. I will do what I do as a referee. I will not favor anyone, and the result is not something I can change. I'm just responsible for ensuring the safety of the two people's lives. If you want to intervene, then you can go to warring states and the two parties involved. But I still advise you. The battle between these two people is not a small action that can change the situation of the war. Quote. Li Eng continued to speak, and after these words, Flying Squirrel and others felt a little ashamed. Feeling embarrassed for what they have done before. Including the ghost spider, they are very embarrassed. Although they have not said it, but they came to Li Eng, which has explained a lot of problems. I didn't say it, but in my heart, I already planned to do it. This was pointed out directly by Li Eng, which still seemed a little embarrassing. So, everyone, you can leave now. Li Eng waved his hand and issued an expulsion order. He will not help either side. Not only is there no satisfying price, but he, Zhao's, also wants to see how the battle between the two will turn out. If intervened, the battle between the two would lack some excitement. As a referee, he naturally has to ensure the fairness and justice of the fight between the two. This is also considered, not ashamed of the conditions promised to him before the Warring States period. Even in the Warring States period, he couldn't be sloppy. Mr. Li Eng, take this leave. Flying Squirrel, Huo Shaoshan and others bowed and said. Soon, they disappeared. The ghost spider and others also said respectfully, Mr. Li Eng, we will go first. Finished talking. Without any hesitation, they left Li Eng's residence immediately. This result, which is reasonable, also makes them slightly disappointed. After all, anyone on either side is counting on Li Eng to be slightly partial. But unfortunately, Li Eng's words directly broke the slightest thoughts in their hearts. Chapter 790-reactions from all parties. In an empty room. Akainu listened to the words of the lieutenant generals. His face was calm and there was no anger. In other words, Li Eng's actions have long been expected. It is reasonable that the other party will not be bribed. In particular, the price they could give could not impress the monster Li Eng at all. The vision of the other party is not what they can imagine. But the group of lieutenant generals who supported Qingzi actually met with them, which was a bit intriguing. Qingzi, this guy is honest and honest on the surface. I didn't expect that he would have a crooked idea. But fortunately, Li Eng, a monster who can't get enough oil and salt, can't be dismissed casually. Akainu narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly. Admiral Sakazuki, are you sure? The ghost spider asked tentatively. Grasp. Akainu sneered, looked out the window, and said firmly, without anyone intervening, I will defeat Aokiji, but it's just a normal thing. I knew, General Sakazuki, that you would definitely win the position of marshal. The four ghost spiders quickly cupped their hands and said excitedly. The Akainu they supported became the marshal, which was more beneficial to them. 170 If Aokiji becomes the marshal, they, as hostile factions, will definitely be suppressed. You all step back, and leave the rest to me and Aokiji to handle it. The others can't be of much help." Akainu waved his hand and said. After the ghost spider and others announced their departure, they gradually disappeared. Looking at their backs, Akainu's smile grew brighter. "Aokiji, Aokiji, your plan has failed. One-on-one, would I be afraid of you? Presumably, you are also not confident enough to find someone to bribe this guy Liang. But unfortunately, you failed." Inside the marshal's office. Today, it is still the Warring States period as the marshal. He frowned, looked at the navy in front of him, and asked, "Are you sure you saw them entering and leaving Liang's house?" "Yes, Marshal, you can never see it wrong." Several navy nodded solemnly and said. Hearing this, Sengoku's mood became more and more irritable. Just now, these people came to his office and reported these things to him. Supported Aokiji and the Aika faction all entered Liang's house by coincidence. If it was said that something did not happen, he would certainly not believe it. But in the end, who wins? This, he did not know. Liang has already discovered your existence. Since he has let people enter the house, it means that he doesn't care that others see these pictures. That is to say, in the eyes of the public, we can't do anything about his strength. However, he still has a moral bottom line. My deal with him is ahead, and he was bribed in the middle. Where will his face be? You don't have to worry about these things. I'm sure that Liang will not be bribed by anyone on either side. So, you can retreat from there and no longer need to monitor Liang. Sengoku said with an expressionless face. What message are you expecting these spies to send back? Their whereabouts may have been discovered by Liang long ago. However, the other party never said anything. Chapter 790 _ The reactions of all parties. However, the other party never said anything. If he continues to monitor, he is really afraid that some contradictions and conflicts will occur. That's still not good for them. The position of marshal is about to be born. In such an emergency, it is best to avoid some conflicts. In particular, the conflict with a monster like Liang broke out. Once a conflict breaks out, it is even more difficult to stop it. Who can stop it? Carp, even himself. They don't have the ability to add up, and monitoring things should be done in moderation, and if they continue to monitor, it will be a bit too much. At first, Liang would turn a blind eye to them, but in the future, he may not have such relief. Yes, Marshal. Several navy nodded solemnly and said. They won't joke about their lives, you know, the person watching is Liang. At the beginning, when they learned about this task, their whole hearts were chilled. Who knows, this monster will suddenly cut himself. Then these people don't even know how to die, and they won't have any clues from others. They will not doubt whether Liang has such ability. Killing them in these little roles is like slaughtering chicks, with no effort. They joined forces, but they couldn't make the majestic sea ripple even a little bit. Therefore, after hearing the words of the Warring States period, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, they can get rid of the pressure and fear that Liang's monster brought to them. Is there anything else? Sengoku looked at the soldiers who still hadn't retreated and asked. Marshal, 2 days later, are the two generals really going to decide between life and death? A soldier hesitated and asked. Who told you to die? Warring States raised his brows and said bluntly, the two are only high and low, not life and death. Where did you get the news? It's just nonsense. It's spread outside, this level of battle, life and death is only a moment. Several Navy soldiers became more and more worried, and their faces hesitated for a while. They dare not imagine what kind of turmoil the death of any general will bring. Whether it is Aokiji or Akainu, the death of any one person is a huge damage to the Navy headquarters. At that time, I'm afraid, pirates may also take advantage of it. In today's naval headquarters, everyone is in danger and feels a sense of crisis. People at the level of generals are going to break out into a war, or the naval headquarters is in a weak state. Once the two generals die, the morale of the naval headquarters will be a huge blow. These issues have also been considered in the warring states. Therefore, he thought of letting Li Ang serve as the referee. If there is this terrifying monster as the referee to weigh the two of Akainu and Aokiji, then the death rate between the two of them will not be too high. At most, there is only a 5% chance. This possibility is because the fight between the two is too intense, and the other party will be killed in seconds, and the death situation will only occur. To be honest, the odds are already high. The strength of the two is similar, and the possibility of a spike is not high. There is also Li Ang as the referee to prevent the winner and attack the loser. In other words, in his opinion, Li Ang, as the referee, the key person to prevent is the ambitious guy Akainu. For Akainu, Sengoku was very worried. As for Aokiji's words, he believes that even if Aokiji might kill Akainu, he would never do it. Chapter 791-Departure. 2 days later. The sun is rising from the sky, and its brilliance illuminates the earth. The whole sea reflects the golden light, like golden sea water. People can't help but take a handful of it, and what they get is only clean seawater. Marin Vando. Coastal. Li Ang looked calm, looked at the warring states beside him, and said, "So, you decided to cross the New World from the Red Earth continent. Tilda. Such a speed, faster." Warring states nodded and said slowly. From the Red Soil continent, to cross the past and arrive at the New World, this method is also the final result after everyone's thinking. If you use a warship, you must go to the Chambord Islands. After coding, according to the pointer, rush to Fishman Island. Then use Fishman Island as a transfer station, and emerge to the other end. This process takes too much time. Sengoku believes that this is a pure waste of time. Moreover, most people choose to dive to Fishman Island to reach the New World because they cannot abandon their pirate ships. And they were different this time. Only 2 people went to the New World, plus Li Ang, at best, only 3 people. The purpose of the 3 people arriving in the New World is not to confront other pirate groups. It's just that Akainu and Aokiji need a battle. In this case, if a warship was used to carry the 3 of Li Ang down to the Fishman Island, it would be a waste of extra time and would not bring any benefits. It is better to cross over directly on the Red Soil continent. Convenient. The biggest problem is to pass through Marijoa, but this is not a problem for the Navy. There is a faster way. Li Ang said with a smile. Please speak. Sengoku's face changed and he asked. Let the 2 of them use the moon step to directly cross the Red Soil continent. The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, and he said with a smile. No. Warring states immediately rejected. If this is the case, it seems to be broken, but in fact, it is still unfair to the 2 of them. The physical strength of the 2 is different, and the control of Yubu is not necessarily the same. I am afraid that the goal has not yet been reached. It takes a lot of physical strength. Quote. If the 2 of them are not fighting in a normal state, the results obtained, I am afraid, will also make people suspicious. Therefore, this method is not advisable. Finished talking. Warring State's eyes flickered, and he said in a low voice, however, I can ask Kizaru to help. Is it possible for the yellow monkey to use the power of the fruit to lead the 2 of them to the New World? It's not impossible. This way, it will obviously save a lot of time. Li Ang nodded in agreement. However, the only problem is that if the Japanese ape is involved, will it interfere with the battle? Warring States frowned. Wei Wei frowned, telling her what was in her heart. Then let him leave immediately after sending people off. If he doesn't leave, it doesn't matter. With me here, he doesn't dare to move. If he moves, I will ask you to help him prepare for the aftermath. Li Ang smiled, not feeling nervous at all. Huang Yuan was beaten by him again, and under his intimidation, how could Huang Yuan dare to act rashly? Not to mention that the yellow monkey is neutral. Even if he really has a very good relationship with a general, in front of Li Ang, he would never dare to be presumptuous. Then let Kizaru come. The Warring States took out the phone bug and gave a few words to the yellow monkey opposite the phone bug. Huang Yuan's speed was very fast, and without blinking, he appeared beside Liang, still having lingering fears, and flattered, "Mr. Liang, good morning." "Morning." Liang nodded and did not ignore it. As the saying goes, if you don't reach out and hit the smiling man, if the yellow ape didn't provoke him, he naturally wouldn't do anything to it. "Kazuna, I'll leave it to you to send Aokiji and Akainu to Dressrosa." Warring States said earnestly, "Remember, after sending them to their destination, immediately return to the naval headquarters. The naval headquarters must be guarded by a general." "Definitely." Chapter 791-Departure. "Definitely." Kazuna nodded without refuting. He couldn't guess that, in fact, it was Warring States who didn't want him to interfere with the war situation, so he said these words. This made Liang smile and curse the old fox in the Warring States period. Sure enough, people who have been marshals for decades are extraordinary. Obviously, he didn't want to let Huang Yuan watch the battle, but he pulled out his reason, leaving Huang Yuan still in the fog, and he didn't know the real plan of the Warring States period. Even, Kizaru still thinks what the Warring States said is right. The headquarters of the Navy really needs a general to guard it to prevent some accidents from happening. Okay, inform Aokiji and Akainu. Warring States took out the phone bug, dialed the two phone bugs one after another, and issued an order for the two to rush to the location on the coast. There is still a long way to go from Marin Fando to the Red Earth continent. At this distance, when it was decided to let Kizaru escort, there was no need to prepare a warship. 0. During the whole process, let Huang Yuan drag the two people alone and reach the new world smoothly. As for Liang, why would he worry about Liang? This monster is faster than Kizaru. Moreover, the physical strength is still inexhaustible. The yellow monkey has not arrived. I am afraid that the other party has already arrived at the destination. In less than a while, Akainu appeared in Liang's line of sight in scarlet clothes, expressionless, blood in his body tumbling, terrifying blood, full of power. He walked step by step, each step was very heavy, the state was very perfect, and he was adjusted to the peak. Marshal of the Warring States. Akainu looked at Sengoku and whispered greetings. Right now, he is just a general. Although the Warring States period was about to retire, he still did not retire, and he still had the power as a marshal. He exuded a scorching heat all around him. The ability of the devil fruit overflows unconsciously, which is a sign of too much energy. Obviously, for this battle, he is also fully prepared. The moment is waiting for the arrival of the green pheasant. Where's the green pheasant? Akainu looked around with his eyes and said lightly. I'm here. Not far away, Qingzi was wearing blue clothes, his face was expressionless, and his body exuded an icy chill. Underfoot, with every step, a small area is frozen. The two looked at each other, no one was timid, they all looked confident. Very good. Warring States showed a smile, took a deep breath, and said, if that's the case, then prepare to leave. Before leaving, my husband declares some things that you need to pay attention to. First, if you win, you can't hurt the life of the person you're standing on. Second, you can't let outsiders participate in it, and the offender will lose his eligibility to run for marshal. Thirdly, this is a battle that belongs to two people. I hope that you can be fair and just, defeat each other with absolute strength, and not win in some stealthy ways. Quote. Finished talking. Warring States shouted. You two, are you ready? Akainu and Aokiji nodded lightly, their faces calm, even if a war was about to break out, they were still fearless. Kazuna, take them away. In the blink of an eye, Sengoku looked at Kizaru and instructed. Good. Kizaru nodded, holding Akainu and Aokiji with both hands. With a swish, his whole body turned into golden light and disappeared without a trace. Chapter 792 _ The Powerlessness of the 5 Old Stars. Everything is up to you, Mr. Liang. Warring States bowed respectfully. Of course I won't break my promise. As long as there is no instant kill, I can still end the battle between the two of them. Moreover, I don't think they will kill people in front of me. Especially, after the victor appears, they will kill the weak. If this spreads out, even if he is a marshal, he will be kicked down. Liang's face was still as peaceful as ever. The battle between the two generals, in his opinion, was not an earth-shattering battle. For others, a battle of this level between the two generals must be earth-shattering. However, Liang did not think that the battle between the two would have a terrifying response. Go away. Liang waved his hand and said slowly. Smooth all the way. 393. Warring States nodded. His tone was gentle, and said. Immediately after. In his sight. Liang's whole person disappeared directly in his eyes. Compared with Kizaru, the speed was definitely not too slow. It's really a monster. It doesn't have a devil fruit, but it's faster than Kizaru. Warring States smiled bitterly, turned his head, and gradually left. Not far away. Hancock, Tautu, and Tina also watched Liang leave, worrying about gains and losses, and gradually walked into the room. Fine. It shouldn't be too long for Liang to leave this time. ... Red Earth continent. The area is very large, and on this red soil continent, there is a luxurious place. Named, Mary Joa. It is also known as the Holy Land. Mary Joanne. Early in a white and empty house. The location of the hall. The 5 old stars are talking. What do you think of the battle between the two generals? A burly man with a goatee raised his brows and asked. The people they support are all red dogs. What else can we do? Whoever wins is the marshal. Now things end in this battle. Even as, we can't change it. That's right, but according to the attributes of the two, Akainu has a significantly higher chance of winning than Aokiji. Of course, this is based on the fact that the two have similar strengths in other aspects. Quote. The rest of the 5 old stars opened their mouths and started talking. Come on. Wu Laoxing with the knife frowned, raised his head, and said. He is naturally the 5 old star who was taken away by Liang from the first generation of ghosts, and now, he still has a famous knife in his hand. But it is no longer any one of the supreme swords. How rare is the supreme knife, it is not something they can get at will. Even if they are 5 old stars, it is impossible for them to want the supreme sword, and they can get it immediately. Some things cannot be brought about by power. The supreme knife has a price and no market. Basically, the people who have seen it are very rare. At present, there are only 2 confirmed ones, Hawkeye's Black Saber Knight. And, the first generation of ghosts worn by Liang was taken from him. Think of this. The late Wu Laoxing coughed, his face full of unwillingness and suffocation. Chapter 792 _ The Powerlessness of the 5 Old Stars. The late Wu Laoxing coughed, his face full of unwillingness and suffocation. The injury that was severely injured by Liang seems to have relapsed recently. Is it difficult for him to breathe? They are here, across the red earth. The rest of the 5 old stars nodded and looked at the ceiling dignifiedly. Everyone can feel that 3 terrifying forces are flashing above their heads. The personnel of these terrorist forces, if the guess is correct, are definitely 3 generals. However, they didn't know that behind Akainu and the others, there was another person who was following him in a hurry. This person is naturally Liang. They are too far away from Liang's realm, so Liang doesn't need to cover up his strength too deliberately at all, and he won't let the 5 old stars find out. Hope, Akainu, don't live up to our hopes. The 5 old stars agreed and said. Akainu was supported by them and competed for the position of marshal. In this regard, they are naturally reluctant to end up and let Qingzi become the marshal. Only when Akainu became the marshal did they think that the people under them would be more obedient. But they don't know that, in fact, they are scheming with the tiger. How could a kainu be a weak and helpless little sheep, allowed to play and play with them? For now, it's just a kainu that needs to use their power. In the future, a kainu became the marshal, all those things, but I can't say for sure. I heard that this time, warring states also invited a referee to be in charge of the battle between the two. Who? Li Ang. Silence. The entire empty hall fell into a dead silence. The breeze blew in and rolled up their hair, causing goosebumps to appear on their arms, and they had lingering fears. They still haven't forgotten the fear that was dominated by Li Ang at that time. That kind of fear, so that they will never forget in this life. In particular, the 5 old stars with knives, their lips trembled, and couldn't help saying, please, Li Ang, this monster, for what? That's right, it's good, what is this monster Li Ang doing in the Battle of the Navy? Who in the end came up with the bad idea? Let Li Ang be the referee. If he suddenly attacks, both generals will fall, no doubt. Everyone, don't worry, if he wants to do it, he doesn't have to be so troublesome. With his strength, he can completely kill a kainu and Aokiji. A 5 old star's face moved, and he had to say so. Immediately. Everyone was silent for a while. A deep sense of powerlessness enveloped their hearts. The word Li Ang suppressed them so much that they couldn't breathe. Back then, they never took Li Ang to heart. However, now they can only look up to each other. The speed of the opponent's growth is amazing. They still doubted why such a terrifying person would appear in the Red Lotus Hell on the 5.70th floor of the Advanced City. Are all the Navy blind? To actually imprison such a terrifying person in the Red Lotus Hell. Moreover, the strength of the other party is so terrifying, why was he captured by those little shrimps and sent to the Red Lotus Hell? He is a mystery, no one knows where he came from and why he became so strong. There are still many doubts that cannot be answered. However, his strength is indeed recognized as strong. He can suppress the naval headquarters and control the Sea Kings. If we can all learn this kind of sky-killing ability, it would be great. Manipulating the Sea Kings, this is something that only Sea Kings can do. However, he did it as a human, he is definitely a human, I can be sure. Quote. The 5 old stars are constantly talking, with a deep sense of powerlessness on their faces. Chapter 793_Influence. The 5 of them were all frightened by Li Ang. The battle that took place back then was terrified by Li Ang's direct fight. At that time, the scene of them begging for mercy is still vivid in my mind. In retrospect, in addition to grief and anger, they also had deep helplessness in their hearts. If possible, they would really like to let Li Ang suffer. But unfortunately, they don't have this strength. If they have to do it, the person who will die will be them, not Li Ang himself. Wait. Wu Laoxing with a knife looked out the window, his pupils shrank, and said, "It seems that someone is approaching from the direction of us in the sky." I didn't feel his breath. He's Li Ang. Among the 5 old stars, there were some people with better eyesight, who petrified them on the spot. The rest of the people's lips moved slightly, and they were silent for a while. Li Ang, this monster actually came to 740 inches to find them. They don't think it's important for the other party to find them. On the contrary, the other party came to them, and absolutely nothing good happened. What is this monster doing for us? The fatter, red-skinned 5 old stars said with a sullen face. I don't know, but it's definitely not a good thing. The rest of the people shook their heads, affirming it immediately. The figure suddenly arrived in front of them. Naturally, this person is Li Ang. Li Ang Lingkong stood by the window, looked at the 5 old stars inside, smiled and said, "It's a coincidence, I happened to pass by, I didn't expect to meet you. Mr. Li Ang." 5 old stars and 5 people showed a smile that was uglier than crying, and said. In the face of Li Ang, how dare they be frivolous, they must be prepared for it. Don't worry, this time, I'm not here to trouble you. It's just that I happened to pass by and wanted to see you old acquaintances, but I won't do anything to you. What are you afraid of? Li Ang smiled and said slowly. If you want to do it, you won't have to wait until now. Can the entire Mary Joa stop his knife? Possibly, it would be possible if the most mysterious king of the heavenly dragons appeared. But as for the 5 old stars, not yet qualified for this. By the way, is the king in your mouth about to be born? I haven't seen each other for so long. I think he should make some big moves. Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. Well, the faces of the 5 old stars have changed dramatically. Li Ang, how did you know about this? They never remembered that they had leaked the news of that adult. However, where did the monster Li Ang know this news? Immediately. They looked bad and stared at Li Ang. If it weren't for Li Ang's strength, they would all want to kill each other directly. However, they are just thinking about it, want to kill Li Ang. Give them 10 times the strength and none of them can do such a thing. What are you talking about? The 5 old star with the knife calmed down and said bluntly. What I'm talking about, I think you should all know. But anyway, I don't have much time, so I won't waste time with you. Next time, I'll come and have a chat with him. Chapter 793_influence. NLT, 29 and GT. What I'm talking about, I think you should all know. But anyway, I don't have much time, so I won't waste time with you. Next time, I'll come and have a chat with him. I'm still very curious about his identity and knowledge. What I'm even more curious about is, who is he? Can you answer me? Li Ang looked at the 5 old stars in front of him and said lightly. He is the first person in this world who dares to stand in front of the 5 old stars, still has no fear, and has no scruples about the 5 old stars' face. Who are you referring to? The red-skinned blonde man, his face unchanged, said. Since I don't want to talk about it, then I won't force you to ask. You guys, do it well. I'll come here again after I've dealt with the matter at hand. I hope that when the time comes, you can let me get my wish. Li Ang laughed loudly, turned around, and the figure just disappeared. At the position by the window, the whole person disappeared without a trace. The 5 old stars, who were still in the hall, stared at Li Ang's back without saying a word, and the atmosphere became deadly silent and silent. How did he know? A 5 old star stared at the other 4 and reprimanded. The identity of the adult is not simple. Before that, some news was leaked. How can they not get angry? If ordinary people, even generals, learn this news, they have to think about it and leave the other party completely. But only Li Ang, they dare not do it. Don't say that Li Ang knows a lot of news, even if the blank 100 years are really revealed, they have tried their best to cover up the truth, they dare not say anything. In the face of absolute strength, they are just a group of chicks, not enough for Li Ang to sit between his teeth. I don't know, he's so weird. It seems that nothing can get rid of his head. Everything we do, and everything that happens in the dark, seems to be seen through by him. Especially, even that lord, he actually knows. How did he know that there is such a person? Could it be that someone in the Tianlong people told him? Quote. The 5 old stars started to talk one after another, but they couldn't get the most real answer. Sudden. A terrifying aura descended directly and enveloped them. With a thump sound, several of the 5 old stars were unstable and fell directly to the ground, their eyes widened. It's Li Ang. One of the 5 old stars trembled and lost his voice. Just now, he shocked us with his aura. I thought it was the end of the world. At that moment, I seemed to be dying. Me too, it's terrifying. His strength seems to have a terrifying improvement. My God, is there an end to his strength? Can he keep getting stronger? In the end, what kind of monster were we facing just now? Just with his aura, he caught us off guard. If, just now, he suddenly attacked us 1.3, what would happen to us? No one dared to go deeper into this matter. Otherwise, they will be horrified to discover that we have already died once. If it wasn't for the fact that Liang hadn't acted in the end, they would have already died on the spot. It's okay, he's gone. Everyone felt relieved, exhaled heavily, and calmed down a little. After calming down a little, their old faces couldn't hold back. Unexpectedly, one day, they will show such an expression because one person leaves. This is really, so embarrassing. They are the 5 old stars. Although we are 5 old stars, he is Liang. A 5 old star waved his hand helplessly and said. In terms of influence, Liang is no weaker than them. Chapter 794 _ The first time in the New World. Above the sky. Liang looked at the Holy Land Mary Joa below. Without hesitation, he had already stood above the heads of all the Tianlong people. If it were someone else, I'm afraid that the 5 old stars couldn't help but beat him down. But unfortunately, he is Liang. The 5 old stars are too late to avoid. How could they take the initiative to send them to the door? These 5 guys are too timid. Liang's mouth moved slightly, his face calm, said. He could clearly feel the fear in Wu Laoxing's heart, and it was because of this that he thought the other party was timid as a mouse. In other words, he didn't do it, right? Under such circumstances, the 5 old stars are still terribly afraid. Besides being timid, what else can be used to describe it? Forget it, let's go. If Kyabu urges the full speed, it will be faster. Immediately, he retracted his gaze and looked at the distant sky ahead. Immediately after, his whole body just disappeared into the air above Mary Joa. After he left. Below, Mary Joa. In a deep area, a person opened his eyes and looked at the sky, with a hint of solemnity flashing in his eyes. He opened his mouth, his voice seemed to come from another distant time and space, without any emotion, bland, like a piece of tasteless water. This person is stronger. ... The other side. Liang dispatched at full speed and chased directly to Kyabu's side. Seeing Liang carrying Akainu and Aokiji, he couldn't help laughing, and he didn't care about Akainu and Aokiji's faces. These 2 people were carried by Huang Yuan as if they were carrying an item. The demeanor of the 2 generals disappeared without a trace. For Liang's laughter, Akainu and Aokiji both looked gloomy, but they didn't dare to say a word. To provoke Liang. They are afraid to die. Is it almost there? Liang looked at Huang Yuan with a calm face, said. Almost there. Kizaru nodded, judging from his experience, it was almost the same. Not only once or twice, he crossed from the Red Earth continent to the New World. Therefore, for such a road, he is well aware of it. The journey to the Red Clay continent, and the time it takes to move at full speed, etc., he has already memorized it by heart, and every time he goes back and forth, he will have a deep memory. Although he is now carrying 2 big men, the impact on his speed is not very big. Mr. Liang, discuss something with you. Huang Yuan coughed dryly and asked tentatively. Say. Liang asked very simply. Of course, he also had some guesses in his heart. If nothing else happened, the thing that Huang Yuan wanted to discuss with him should be whether he could stay and watch the game. This is not impossible. He is also confident that he can prevent Kizaru from interfering with the battle. As expected. Kizaru hesitated for a moment, then said, Can I stay there and watch the battle? Aren't you going to go back to guard Malinfando? Now, Malinfando is badly damaged. If there is no general to guard it, I'm afraid that people will take advantage of it to enter. Liang couldn't help looking at Kizaru curiously and asked with a smile. This is not the first time I have heard the words of Marshal of the Warring States period. I can tell at a glance which of his words are true and which are false. The reason why I didn't show it was to make him feel at ease. I really thought I was a little character who didn't know anything. I'm a general. The yellow monkey raised his head, looking very confident. It seems that he was not deceived by the Warring States period, but that he was deceived on purpose. Everyone is a human being. Chapter 794-New World. NLT, 31 and GT. Everyone is a human being. Li Ang couldn't help laughing. Not only the Warring States period is a human essence, but also the Japanese ape is an out-and-out human essence. It's no wonder that if Huang Yuan didn't have a head, he wouldn't have been in this position for so long, and he didn't show any signs of shaking. Because he is very clear in his heart what he needs, and how he wants to cover up and so on. With a high status in the Warring States period, Huang Yuan can only act more lazy, and he has already restrained his shrewd and careful thoughts, which will not make people jealous. This is also the self-protection that Kizaru has developed for himself. You are free, anyway, I don't think you can interfere in this level of battle. Li Ang smiled, waved his hand, and said, well. Kizaru's forehead burst into blue veins, and looking at Li Ang's mocking face, he felt aggrieved for a while. Actually, despised. What does this mean? Do you think you are inferior to Akainu or Aokiji? Absolutely. Would I be inferior to Aokiji or Akainu? I'm not even qualified to interfere in this kind of battle. Kizaru was almost mad, and almost couldn't help throwing Akainu and Aokiji on the spot. Kazuna, don't be impulsive. Aokiji raised his brows and said. I know. Kizaru exhaled heavily, finally suppressing the restlessness in his heart. However, Akainu said at this time, Kazuna, although Mr. Li Ang is telling the truth, don't take it to heart. You know, this is the truth, and there is nothing to refute. Cough cough. Kazuna coughed violently. Who is this? Why, each one's mouth is so sharp. What else? Wouldn't it be better to just use words to defeat the opponent? Still fighting with such trouble. Seeing Kizaru's aggrieved appearance, Li Ang smiled and looked forward with his eyes. Below, the boundaries of the Hongtu continent appear. Further ahead is the endless sea. With the terrifying speed of Li Ang and Huang Yuan, it is not a big problem to want to traverse the Red Earth continent. The time consuming is also quite short. 007. Although, the hurricane hammered their hair a little messy. Boom. In the sky, a cloudless cloud filled the air, flashes of lightning flashed, and the violent power sizzled, making people dare not look directly. A thunder slashed down and hit the sea. The sea was hit by waves, and the waves rolled. This bad weather, is this the new world? Li Ang raised his head, looked at the dark clouds, and smiled faintly. Unlike the others, the expressions of the others, including Akainu, became very depressed. Apparently, they were affected by the strange weather. However, Li Ang will not be affected by this little weather. Bad weather was one of the things that made the New World different from the Great Channel. People who die in the New World all year round are not just because of fighting. Changes in weather are also the main factor leading to many deaths. This is my first time in the New World. Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, and he said with a faint smile. The first time I came to the New World, it seemed that I didn't feel anything new. However, here, he could feel that the atmosphere was different from that of the Great Channel. Here, there is an atmosphere of fierce competition everywhere. If you want to survive here, you have to adapt to the laws of the New World, the strong eat the weak. NLT, 32 and GT. Chapter 795-Punk Hazard. Hearing Li Ang's emotion, Akainu was speechless. Who is like you, so perverted? Before entering the New World, the strength has already shocked every inch of the New World. Such a person is the first ever. Only Li Ang can do this. Come on, just ahead. Huang Yuan didn't stop, and said slowly. Thunder and lightning, for them, do not have much lethality, their heart palpitations are the strange emotions brought to them by this strange weather. As for what is really offensive, it is not something that ordinary thunder and lightning can bring to them. Ordinary lightning, to them, is just a tickling. Immediately, Kizaru carried the dark cloudy weather in the sky, carrying Akainu and Aokiji, and swiftly moved forward. The speed of thunder and lightning, I'm afraid it's nothing more than that. Especially, if Huang Yuan is still with people, otherwise, he can really try to compete with the speed of thunder and lightning. Seeing the departure of Kizaru and others, Liang also set off. At this time, on the sky, boom! A thunder and lightning like a giant snake slid down sharply, aiming at Liang's position. The high-altitude target is too big, but why are you hacking me? Liang shook his head, feeling a little bored. If it's just this level, it's still too weak. I see. His hands were not even armed. He raised his head, looked at the thunder and lightning that fell in the sky, spread his hands, and directly caught the huge thunder and lightning. In his hand, it can be seen that even lightning can't penetrate his skin, only the palm of his hand becomes black. Boom! The terrifying collision shone brightly. Then, Liang exerted a little force on his hands, and the thunder and lightning disappeared without a trace. He didn't have any scars except that his hands became charred. Get your hands dirty. Liang waved his hand, and gradually landed on the sea surface. He used the sea water to wash the supplies in his hands a little. With a smile on his face, he looked at the golden monkey who was still in front of him, and the figure disappeared. After he disappeared, ow! A giant beast roared, and a fang appeared on the sea where he was standing, and it violently poured all the sea water into its stomach. If Liang hadn't left just now, then he would most likely be swallowed into the belly of the beast. This is the Sea King class. A terrifying body of nearly 30 meters, such a body type, and a great waterway, are considered a very remarkable Sea King. But in the New World, there are countless such Sea Kings. Want to eat me? Liang stood high in the sky, looking at the Sea Kings below, thinking helplessly. Is your reputation not loud enough? This has just entered the New World. Not only was it struck by lightning, but even the Sea Kings wanted to eat themselves. Thinking of this, he waved the slash casually, and left the area without looking at the result. Puff! The entire sea was cut off. A Sea King with a body of nearly 30 meters was turned into two halves. Whoa! The seawater gradually healed and returned to its former state again. The seawater that was originally contaminated with blood gradually thinned. Boom! Chapter 795 _ Hassad. NLT, 33 and GT. Boom! The sky was still thundering, and the dark environment made people feel a burst of depression involuntarily. Here is the New World. A sea where countless lives were lost. Compared with here, the Great Waterway is as peaceful as a back garden. And here, large-scale battles break out every day, and there are countless pirates with bounties of hundreds of millions. On the sea, pirate ships emerged from the bottom of the sea. They all went through untold hardships to enter the New World from the seabed from the transfer station of Fishman Island. As soon as they came to the New World, they experienced a big baptism. The thunder and lightning in the sky slammed down, and some unlucky ones were directly chopped into ashes together with the pirate ship. Ah! Countless people shouted and wailed, and some regretted it. However, the matter has come to this point, they can only continue to sail down. More people are yearning, even if there are many crises here, it is difficult to stop their ambitions. At the same time, Liang quickly caught up with Kizaru. His face was calm, as if nothing had happened. The first time I came to the New World, my mood was naturally a little different. It's just that it felt good at first, but after staying here for a long time, naturally, everything will no longer have the original freshness. It's bad weather here, no wonder the death toll in the New World is so high. Liang's mouth moved slightly, and he whispered to himself. Mr. Liang, you were struck by lightning just now. Kizaru looked at Liang, trying to hold back his smile, said. He's so handsome, I can't help it. Even God is jealous and wants to destroy me in the world. It's a pity that God can't kill me. That little thunder is not enough to tickle me. Liang smiled and said. In response, Kizaru rolled his eyes and thought to himself, you think beautifully then. What, do you have an opinion? Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and asked. Don't dare. Huang Yuan was stunned, and he almost forgot, this is a big Buddha, and he can't tolerate slander in his heart. Soon, he put aside many thoughts in his mind. Because, he saw an island in front of him. Punk Hasad, it's close at hand. From the Great Waterway, across the Red Soil continent, and then to Punk Hasad, in fact, it has not taken much time. The whole process took less than an hour. Maybe not even half an hour. This is Punk Hasad. Li Ang's eyes flickered, looking at the island that was getting closer and closer, and said in a low voice. If you guessed correctly, his partner, Doflamingo, has also arranged staff here. Li Qinhao, not surprisingly, in Punk Hasad, there must be Doflamingo's men hidden. That one, the scientist named Kaiser Kalang. A scientist who thinks he can surpass Vegapunk. You can talk to him later. Li Ang showed a bit of interest on his face, thinking about it in his heart. Although Caesar is not as good as Vegapunk, he is also a genius. Even if Vegapunk is not in a hurry, he is a madman in the field of science. Compared with other scientists, Caesar is also a top genius. Unfortunately, he worked with Vegapunk, and was completely shrouded in Vegapunk's light, which made him breathless. This is far less famous than Vegapunk. If you want to create a technology kingdom, it would be a good way to catch him. Li Ang smiled even brighter, thought to himself. Caesar still doesn't know that he has been targeted by a big devil. NLT, 34 and GT. Chapter 796 _ the beginning of the war. If you let him know, he will definitely shout wrong. After all, he didn't do anything, so he was targeted for no reason. He shouted injustice, afraid that no one would say anything. At this time, Kazaru's figure gradually landed on the ground, looking at the withered soil of Punk Hasad in front of him, his face expressionless, with a bit of solemnity. Here, it has been blocked for many years. Presumably, all creatures will not appear here. Therefore, the two of you can play against each other with confidence. Kazaru let go of his hands, looked at the two, and said. Punk Hasad, they are officially landed. Kazuna, you said all my words first. You asked me, the referee, what to say next. Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, looking at the yellow monkey, said. Cough cough. Huang Yuan coughed dryly and smiled dryly. I'm sorry, Mr. Li Ang. It's not my intention to be straightforward. Next, it's up to you to speak. Li Ang retracted his gaze with satisfaction, looked at the quiet scene around him, and said, let's use this as the battlefield for the two of you. I think you should have no opinion. The surrounding area is just ordinary dry land. It seems that there is nothing out of the ordinary. 750 due to one experiment, this place has been reduced to a desert. At that time, everyone died here, making the whole island a deserted island. Even now, no one dares to set foot on this land, for fear that they will be killed by the poisonous gas of those researches. Therefore, the Navy headquarters ordered to make this a restricted area. No problem. Akainu and Aokiji were expressionless and nodded. They looked at each other, and in their eyes, they could see the mighty fighting spirit. The flames of war were raging and burning. It can be seen that the two of them can't wait to do it now. Delaying for a minute and a second was not the intention of the two of them. The place here is quite wide, so here it is. Li Ang took a few steps back and glanced at Kazaru's position. Under his gaze, Kazaru scratched his head, smiled shyly, and quickly got rid of this battlefield. Under Li Ang's eyes, how could he dare to do something sneaky? If he did such a thing, he didn't think that he could escape Li Ang's palm. I've been waiting for this day. It's been a long time. Akainu's eyes twinkled brightly, and said coldly, Aichi. The blood in his body is tumbling, and the terrifying blood rises into the sky. The momentum is like a rainbow, and it exudes full power. It's not a tyrant color, but it is comparable to the momentum of a tyrant color. If ordinary people are in his aura, I am afraid that they will be shocked and confused. Me too. Aokiji looked at Akainu and said calmly. He turned into an ice sculpture, blowing cold air from his mouth. His face was serious and serious, completely different from the lazy and lazy he used to be. Since he has decided on the position of marshal, no matter how lazy he is on weekdays, it is impossible to show it today. The position of marshal, he also thought in his heart that he was bound to win. You must defeat Akainu to become a marshal. But, you are too weak. Akainu sneered, shook his head, and said. Lava emerged from his hands, fell to the ground, and burned the ground to create large holes. Even the earth, under his magma, had to be corroded cleanly. The two immediately activated the power of the devil fruit, and the two sides, one hot and one cold, looked at each other. Crunch. Chapter 796 _ the beginning of the war. NLT, 35 and GT. Crunch. Under Aokiji's feet, the ice cubes gradually spread, and the surrounding generation was turned into ice cubes by his direct use of the fruit power. Not far away, Liang and Kizaru watched as the battle was about to break out, and the expressions on their faces became more and more curious. Are you sure you won't go back to Marinfando? Liang looked beside him, and asked with a smile on the cheeky yellow monkey who wanted to stay. I have never seen this level of battle. I must stay here to see the horror of this level of battle. Kizaru shook his head immediately, joking, and now let him return to Marinfando. Naturally, he would refuse. Seeing the terrifying power and momentum of the two of them, he couldn't look away. He was directly attracted, and he couldn't help but indulge himself in watching this battle. Liang didn't care about Huang Yuan's answer. Anyway, in his opinion, it was impossible for Huang Yuan to do something, and that was enough. If Kizaru wants to do it, he is confident enough to kill Kizaru in the shortest possible time, so that the opponent will not bring any changes to the battle. Huang Yuan didn't know about this at all. If he was told, he wouldn't have a strong desire to stay here. After all, being cared about by a monster is not a good feeling for anyone. They are about to start. Kizaru's eyes flickered, and he couldn't help but whisper. He stared straight ahead with his eyes full of energy. As a general, he naturally understood the strength of these two colleagues. However, this kind of battle to do everything to win is obviously rare. A battle that can make both of them do their best is very rare. You know, both of them are generals. The generals can only do their best to besiege Liang, and the time when the Whitebeard pirates attacked Marinfando can only be vaguely seen. Moreover, the time he fought with Whitebeard, Akainu broke out with all his strength. But the scene was so chaotic that it was impossible for anyone to fully watch a fight go on. In particular, Akainu was hammered by Whitebeard. The gap in strength is still a bit huge, and this kind of battle is not very exciting. Only when the strength of the two people is similar, the battle that broke out will be more exciting. For example, Akainu and Aokiji in front of him. Fight! Huang Yuan thought to himself, he couldn't wait. If Akainu and Aokiji know what he is thinking, I am afraid that they will have to drive him out and fight again. At this time, Liang looked at the red dog and the green pheasant in front of him. He knew that these two people were brewing their own momentum. Both sides, one hot and one cold. The magma rolled on the ground, bringing a very hot breath. On the opposite side, there is a piece of frozen land, which is very cold. The completely different temperature difference makes it impossible to stay normally. Only the powerhouses like Liang and Huang Yuan would ignore these changes in the environment. However, the terrifying power of Akainu and Aokiji still amazes Kasaragi. Forcefully use the power of devil fruit to change the geographical environment, and want to create an environment that is more beneficial to you. The two of them have already fought. The corner of Huang Yuan's mouth moved slightly, and he said in a low voice. If you keep talking, I will consider throwing you off the island. Liang's face was calm, he glanced at the yellow monkey, and said. Don't dare. Huang Yuan smirked, and quickly shut up. NLT, 36 and GT. Chapter 797 _ Battle. Look well and study hard. Liang looked at Akainu and Aokiji in front of him, and said to Kizaru next to him. Hearing this, Huang Yuan felt aggrieved, but he didn't dare to speak. Is it possible that you hate yourself very weakly? However, in front of Liang, he really didn't dare to say that he was very strong. Just kidding, he is very strong. Can he be stronger than Liang? If you can't, it's a shame. It's about to collide. Liang narrowed his eyes slightly and said slowly. In the battlefield ahead. Akainu's hands sprang up with lumps of magma, falling to the ground, expressionless, shouting, Qingzi, today, I will defeat you. If you are not careful, and you die in battle, then I can only say sorry. Quote. It's a coincidence, that's what I thought too. Aokiji didn't speak much, and cold air came out of his body, and his whole body turned into ice cubes. The cold air spread around him. The entire ground has turned into ice, and on the ice, is his home ground. However, the temperature on Akainu's body in front of him was too high, and the ice cubes that had just condensed here gradually melted into water, making his face a little unnatural. Properties are opposed, you will lose. Akainu Lang laughed and attacked suddenly. He kicked his feet, and the magma gathered in his hands, and a huge fist slammed down. Big Spitfire. At the beginning, he launched a very powerful killing move, and 013 bombed down against the Aokiji. Aokiji didn't hit hard, and took a few steps back, like a monkey, dodging the attack of Akainu. Boom. Akainu's fists bombarded the ground, and the entire earth cracked open and was eroded by magma. The splashing magma scattered everywhere, making the temperature here even hotter. Immediately afterwards, Akainu looked at Aokiji not far away, and attacked again. As for the green pheasant, he always avoided his edge and never confronted him. This made Akainu feel very aggrieved and shouted, Are you just running away blindly? In this way, you can't beat me. Sooner or later, you will be hit by me. Then give it a try. Aokiji was not provoked, and still faced it calmly. A chill appeared in his hands, ice cubes emerged and formed a knife, which he held in his hands. Armed color domineering coverage. The incomparably rigid armed color is domineering, like black jade. Aokiji, my ice blade, took the initiative to attack and met Akainu's attack. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, the two collided for more than a dozen rounds. Akainu used his eyes and frantically burst out of lava, intending to besiege Aokiji. But being approached at close range by Aokiji also made him unable to carry out a large-scale attack, and could only collide with Aokiji at close range. The ice blade held by the green pheasant is covered with a layer of armed color, which can effectively immunize the attributes of the opposite. Under the domineering cover of the armed color, the rock fruit was still unable to melt the ice blade in his hand. Damn! Akainu cursed loudly, and his face became more and more solemn. Really? As he guessed, the green pheasant is not a soft persimmon. Everyone has been a colleague for so many years, and he still understands Qingzi's strength very well. If it is a soft persimmon, it is impossible to become a general. Moreover, the opponent's use of armed arrogance also effectively curbed the advantage of his attributes. This made him feel like he had a big Liang, but he couldn't vent. Must keep your distance. Akainu thought to himself. Magma emerged from his hands, and the bombing violently rose. Big Spitfire. Terrifying magma enveloped Aokiji's body. If you are hit by this terrifying attack, I am afraid that Aokiji will not feel better. Chapter 797 _ Battle. NLT, 37 and GT. If you are hit by this terrifying attack, I am afraid that Aokiji will not feel better. Aokiji backed away and was forced back by Akainu. The distance between the two is widened. It's time. Akainu's eyes widened, looking at the sky. Magma emerged from his fists, and fists formed from magma attacked the position of the sky. The originally dark environment suddenly became dazzling. On the sky, One by one, the fists stained with firelight attacked down violently, just like a meteor shower. Meteor volcano. Akainu grinned, looked at Aokiji in front of him, and shouted. Opposite. Aokiji raised his brows, feeling a little troublesome. This wide-ranging attack is not good for him, because his IA attributes cannot be compared with Akainu's attributes. This large-scale attack will also curb the possibility of him using the armed color to defend. Have. Aokiji's eyes flashed, and a smile appeared. Under the eyes of Akainu, I saw that Aokiji took a deep breath, and the powerful fruit ability was activated on his body, and the water mist in the air was glassed. The water mist solidified into tiny ice points. Although it is small, the water mist in the whole air is more than a little bit. Within a radius of 20 meters, all the water mist turned into freezing point, and under the control of the green pheasant, attacked in the direction of the sky. It's like pieces of incomparably small hail, condensed into bursts of swift and violent offensives, although the area is small, but the number is large. Boom! The collision between the magma and the freezing point erupted. In the sky, a piece of hot magma slid down and fell to the ground. Some magma was directly extinguished by the countless freezing points of the green pheasant. Well. Akainu's expression changed slightly, but he did not expect that Aokiji would use such a clever method to block his move. You know, there is no seawater around here. Therefore, from the environmental point of view, it is still relatively unfavorable for the green pheasants. However, Aokiji found the water source from the air abruptly, and then used the fruit ability to create countless freezing points, blocking his meteor volcano. Aoki, you are really strong. Akainu looked serious and had to admit it. The opponent in front of him is his colleague. Like him, they are all powerful people like monsters. Boom. The horrific collision continues. Finally. Akainu's meteor volcano, the water mist in the air was solidified by the green pheasant, which directly resolved this terrible trick with extremely wide lethality. The two looked at each other, expressionless and serious. This brief confrontation made each of them understand that the other party is not an ordinary person. But, even so, cannot let them lose the confidence of victory. Come again. Akainu shouted, his hands turned into magma, and attacked away with terrifying magma. His hands, still braving black smoke, were as imposing as ever. Come on. Aokiji's face was expressionless, an ice cube appeared in his hands, and covered with armed color, he took the initiative to attack, and chose to confront Akainu head-on. Off the field. Liang and Kizaru couldn't take their eyes away. Although this level of battle, Liang believes that he is confident that he will break through it, but looking at these two people who are on the same level, it is still very enjoyable to watch. I don't know how he would feel if Akainu and Aokiji knew what he was thinking. They fought desperately, actually, they just made Liang think that it was very entertaining. Afraid not, they will be so angry that they vomit blood. Chapter 798-Magma vs. Freeze. From the current point of view, neither of them has an advantage. It's about the same, to a similar degree. Next, it's hard to say which one is stronger and which is weaker. Huang Yuan's face was solemn and he said slowly. With his eyes, it is natural to see the changes in the battle situation. I originally thought that Akainu would more or less have a certain advantage. But I didn't expect that Akainu with rockberry fruit can obviously suppress the frozen fruit of Aokiji. As soon as the battle broke out, it did not show any advantage. This made Kizaru have to admire the level of Aokiji's fighting. To a certain extent, it is precisely because of the many strategies that Aokiji has just started that this situation can be created. Both sides, on par. Even if the Devil Fruit's ability is restrained, Aokiji is still not cowardly. If it were Kizaru himself, he would have no such ability. Among the three generals, you are the weakest. What do you think? The corners of Liang's mouth were slightly upturned, and he looked at the yellow monkey with a smile and said. Thinking. Huang Yuan almost coughed out his lungs, shook his head and said, I have no idea, whether they are strong or not. Where do I feel? I think I am still fine now. Sure enough, you are the real salted fish. Liang smiled and said. Salted fish, what is this? Huang Yuan was confused and asked in confusion. It means that among the three generals, there are only people who are messing around. Liang didn't hide it, and said directly, okay, let's watch the battle between the two of them. Next, it's time for them to really make a real move. What am I messing around with? Huang Yuan muttered a few words, very dissatisfied. But he couldn't refute it head-on, so he could only stare at the battle between Akainu and Aokiji in front of him. The battle intensified. Aokiji held the ice blade in both hands, covering the armed color domineering, directly suppressing the magma of Akainu. Akainu's face was ugly, and magma continued to emerge, and he wanted to carry out an extremely terrifying attack. But unfortunately, being attacked by the green pheasant made him very difficult. The advantage of his fruit ability is completely unable to be reflected. Aokiji's fighting level shows how terrifying it is. On weekdays, he looks peaceful, but once he really fights, he doesn't counsel anyone. Ming dog. Akainu gritted his teeth and roared. Magma erupted from his whole body, black smoke curled up, clenched his fists, and the magma attacked, with a hot temperature, and instantly arrived in front of the green pheasant. Boom! A terrifying voice sounded, and Aokiji was beaten upside down by more than 10 meters, widening the distance. He rubbed on the ground for more than 10 meters before it stopped, his hands were shaking, and the original ice blade gradually appeared a crack. Even with the blessing of armed color, it is difficult for him to resist Akainu's terrifying blow. Ice Age. Aokiji took a deep breath, put his hands close to the ground, and said softly. Click. The ground was filled with terrifying cold air, and the whole field belonged to his home court. He directly turned the surrounding generation into an immobile ice field. Immediately after, he stepped on it with one foot, cracked the ice cube, and activated the fruit ability. The broken ice cubes, under the blessing of his fruit ability, continued to expand in area. In a blink of an eye, he held a huge ice cube in both hands and threw it at Akainu. At the same time, when the ice cubes attacked Akainu, Aokiji still did not stop. The cold air permeated his body, the whole person turned into ice cubes, and there was cold air coming out between breathing. The ice cube, in an instant, produced a clone. A huge ice cube suddenly turned into 2, 4. Continuously increasing. Even if Akainu saw the huge ice cube, his scalp felt numb for a while. He was actually surrounded by a lot of ice cubes. Big Spitfire. Akainu's ability to activate the fruit, and the ability of the rock fruit to activate, turned into a hot breath. Chapter 798-Magma vs. Frozen. NLT, 39 and GT. Akainu's ability to activate the fruit, and the ability of the rock fruit to activate, turned into a hot breath. Black smoke came out, and he violently attacked the magma into the countless ice blocks ahead. Boom! A terrifying collision erupted. The ice cubes were cracked and turned into tiny ice cubes, still attacking in the direction of Akainu. Not good. Akainu's face changed slightly. It turned out that the purpose of the green pheasant turned out to be like this. Aokiji deliberately used so many ice cubes to attack him, and he was foolishly fooled. Once hit hard, these ice cubes will shatter and turn into countless sharp little ice cubes, attacking in his direction. Such an attack is much more powerful than bullets. The shock wave brought by the collision made the speed of these sharp little ice cubes even more terrifying. Call out, call out, call out. Cubes of ice pierced the air and swiftly attacked where Akainu was standing. The overwhelming ice cubes burst, all coming in his direction. At this moment, the attack that Akainu was about to meet was beyond his imagination. 0 katakana middle dot 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 katakana middle dot. Blue pheasant. His eyes were red, and he screamed. At the same time, the magma that emerged from his body became even more terrifying. The magma spread to the ground, melting all the ice blocks created by the green pheasant ice age into water stains. The terrifying temperature spread instantly. This temperature is higher than the temperature he brought before. Even if you have all kinds of strategies, they are useless in the face of my magma. After he finished speaking, he ignored the constantly attacking ice cubes and tried his best to push his magma path to the extreme. The temperature rose in vain, and even the ground he was standing on collapsed into a pothole. The terrifying temperature filled the air, and all the ice cubes attacked Akainu at a terrifying speed. However, when he was about to approach Akainu, these ice cubes turned into water stains and evaporated into the air in an instant. Call out, call out, call out. Countless ice cubes, targeting Akainu, kept attacking. Unfortunately, the temperature emitted by Akainu's body is so high that these ice cubes cannot be approached at all, and they are melted into a pool of water stains, and even water vapor. I said, my magma has absolute restraint on your fruit ability. Akainu laughed loudly, his voice rough. Not necessarily. Aokiji said slowly with an expressionless face. I don't know when. A huge ice thorn had solidified in his hands, and under his urging, he violently attacked in the direction of Akainu. This ice thorn is completely different from a small ice cube. Akainu's magma may not be able to melt this ice thorn in a short time. It's useless. Akainu is still unscrupulous, said coldly. Go. Aokiji didn't say much and launched an attack. Call out. The ice thorn suddenly stabbed in the direction of Akainu's body, and the hot temperature brought by the magma really melted the ice thorn. Seeing this scene, Akainu's smile grew brighter. At this speed, the ice thorn has not yet reached his body. I am afraid, it will turn into water vapor and disappear with the wind. Off the field. Li Ang shook his head and laughed when he saw Akainu's arrogant appearance. He was tricked. Mr. Li Ang, what do you mean? Huang Yuan looked anxious and couldn't help asking. He didn't know at all, where was the trick? He watched the entire battle, and he never found out where his negligence occurred. Chapter 799 _ Take a Gamble. As an outsider, even he couldn't see any clues. Can't imagine, can Akainu find it? The thought of how fierce the battle between these two was, made Kizaru feel ashamed. Akainu got tricked. In the end, where did it count? As an outsider, he can't see anything wrong. If he were the Akainu, he would feel a chill in his heart. Thought here. He hurriedly looked at Li Ang for an answer. Look at it, you will know it naturally. The result will surprise you. With a smile on his face, Li Ang said without breaking a point. Hearing this, Kizaru didn't ask any more questions, and focused on the battlefield ahead without blinking. In the end, where was the neglect? With such doubts in his heart, he watched the battle between the two. In the end, his eyes were fixed on the ice thorn. Could it be, is this the ice thorn? The 550 battlefield. Akaji Lang Lang laughed. Aoki, it's useless. Any of your fruit attacks will have no effect on me. My magma freezes yours and restrains them to death. This is not a showdown of fruits, it's a pity that you don't know it at all. Qingzi shook his head and sneered, and said slowly. He fixed his eyes on the ice thorn, without blinking, waiting for the passage of time. Then see who has the last laugh. Akainu snorted coldly, activating the fruit ability, and the temperature increased even higher. He squinted at the ice thorn, and it kept melting, unmoved. It was about to melt into water, so naturally he would not have the slightest fear. However, things took a turn for the worse. In his sight, I saw. Originally, the ice thorn had turned into water, but at some point, the ice thorn revealed a pitch-black sharp head. As the ice thorns get closer to Akainu, the ice thorns originally composed of ice cubes will also be completely melted into water stains. After falling to the ground, they will be quickly evaporated. This is. Akainu's pupils shrank and he lost his voice. Careless. After the ice cubes were all melted. Actually, a sharp stone appeared, and it was full of armed domineering. He couldn't melt the stone, which he didn't expect at all. When exactly did Aokiji get this sharp stone? In order to deceive people and make him negligent, he made a large piece of ice and shrouded it on top of the stone. So much so that he thought he had the chance to win. After the ice cubes melted, the sharp stones covered with armed colors appeared in his eyes, and they continued to magnify. The speed was extremely fast, and the air was cut through. Not good. Akainu's eyes widened, gritted his teeth, and forcibly moved his position. If he didn't move his position, the stone that covered the domineering look of armed color would hit his head. Elementalized. Elementalization is of no use at all here. This is a stone covered with an armament color, not a normal stone. Even if an ordinary stone is sharp, it is a huge problem to cut through his skin. Have to dodge. Akainu gritted his teeth, looking at the attack that was getting closer, and turned sideways. Puff. The blood of the bright red demon was scattered all over the air. Kizaru outside the arena was stunned. This combat experience, even he could not imagine. Actually, wrapping the real killer with ice cubes, and then paralyzing Akainu's heart, made Akainu develop his invincible temperament. In this way, Akainu will be negligent. I think that I don't have the extra strength to solve this small ice thorn attack. It is Akainu's practice to directly use the temperature of the rock fruit to melt the ice. Chapter 799 _ Take a Gamble. And GT, page 1/2. Please click the next page to continue reading. It is Akainu's practice to directly use the temperature of the rock fruit to melt the ice. But it was this approach that put Akainu directly into crisis. Aokiji, it's a bit beyond my imagination. Kizaru's lips moved slightly, and he couldn't help but say. Aokiji's fighting power and fighting thinking are beyond his imagination. In such a short period of time, the red dog was actually injured, but it caused the red dog to bleed. That's why I asked you to learn a little bit. After all, you are a general, but you are more than 1 or 2 levels behind. Liang smiled and said. At this time, Huang Yuan was also powerless to refute. He was really taken aback by Aokiji's fighting mentality. If it was him, he simply couldn't think of such an attacking method. Not only does it require a certain amount of brain power, but also the movement must be fast, and psychologically, many plans such as paralysis of the Akainu are also interlocked. Only then can this be the final blow. At this moment, Akainu's left face was scratched with a huge scar, and blood was exposed. His face was ugly, and he stared at the green pheasant in front of him, motionless. He was furious. Actually, being overcast by Aokiji, how could he bear it? Fortunately, he avoided the fatal key position at the critical moment, otherwise, it would not just be as simple as slashing his face. But his whole head would have to explode. Call. Akainu exhaled heavily, using the ability of magma to directly use the magma to dry and condense the blood. It was, temporarily, preventing the wound on the face from getting worse. He stared at the green pheasant in front of him, and said solemnly, I underestimated you, but I won't show any mercy in the future. Could it be that from the beginning, you were merciful? Aokiji's face was calm. In this way, he seems to be the one who can win the final victory. Able to shield the attributes of mutual restraint, but still the first time, brought injury to Akainu. It seems simple, but if any one step goes wrong, the attack will be scrapped. But every step is well underway. Only then did his attack hit Akainu smoothly. It's a pity that it didn't hit the key position. It's a pity. Aokiji sighed and shook his head. Just now, he thought he could successfully blow the head of Akainu. But still, underestimate the general's ability to respond. Akainu reacted directly and avoided the most critical place. Although the skin was cut, it was not a serious injury. You give me death. Akainu was angry, and when he saw Aokiji showing a pity, he felt that his nerves were completely detonated. Actually, it was almost defeated by this little trick. How could he bear it? Attributes are mutually restrained, giving him incomparable confidence. 5.8 But now, he has stabilized his mentality, and next, his attacks will be more cautious. And Aokiji, if you rely on the strategy just now, it is absolutely impossible to defeat Akainu. Off the field. Huang Yuan took a deep breath and said, Aokiji, very strong. No, now, Akainu is stronger. Li Ang shook his head, looking at the blood tumbling on Akainu's body, and said, Conspiracy is always just conspiracy. When Akainu became cautious, Aokiji's many strategies had nowhere to play. So, next, it should be time for Akainu to suppress Aokiji. However, I still feel that Aokiji has a better chance of winning. Kazuna still insisted on his own ideas. Really? Li Ang glanced at Kizaru and saw the excited look of the other party. He couldn't help but propose with a smile, how about we take a gamble? NLT, 42 and GT. Chapter 800 Look well, learn hard. In the battlefield. The magma appeared in Akainu's hands, and the crazy magma spewed out, slamming the position where the green pheasant stood in front, bringing the hot temperature. There were small pits in the ground. Boom. With loud noises, Aokiji quickly retreated, not daring to confront Akainu. Die. Akainu's face was frosty, staring at Aokiji coldly. Just now, if he hadn't been too careless, he wouldn't have been hurt at all. But he never thought that Aokiji actually used this strategy. When the two fought, he was the first to be injured, which made him not angry. At the moment, he broke out a terrifying attack, one after another, wrapped the green pheasant, killed the killer, and showed no mercy. This kind of battle, if the goal is not to kill the opponent, it is difficult to defeat the opponent. Knowing this deeply, both Akainu and Aokiji didn't hold back. Aokiji fell into passive, but still dealt with it very rigorously, and did not leak any loopholes to attack Akainu. Boom, boom, boom. The collision of the two shook the ground to pieces. Moreover, the ability of frozen fruit and rockberry fruit also makes the ground present a scene of ice and fire. One side is infinitely hot, and the other is extremely cold. Off the field. Huang Yuan scratched his head and said, how to bet 08. No matter how you look at it, he still thinks that Aokiji is more likely to win this battle. At first, he thought that Akainu would have an absolute advantage, but now it seems that Akainu, who was suppressed by Aokiji from the beginning, could not exert the true power of fruit ability at all. Even the fruit's ability to restrain the opponent is so suffocating. Come to think of it, victory should be far away. This was what was in his mind. Simple, who do you choose to win? Li Ang narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. Whoever chooses. Kizaru hesitated for a while, looking at the fierce battle between the two in front, not knowing which one to choose. If it hasn't started, he will naturally choose Akainu. But now that the battle started, he hesitated. Because, Akainu does not bring absolute suppression to Aokiji as he imagined. On the contrary, everything was directly suppressed by Aokiji's strategy. It's really hard to say who is stronger or weaker in such a stalemate. However, after Aokiji's clever attack just now, Kizaru subconsciously became more optimistic about Aokiji, and changed all the thoughts in his head. I choose Aokiji. The corner of Huang Yuan's mouth moved slightly and said slowly. I guessed you would say that. Then I'll choose Akainu. What's the bet this time? Berry. It's too vulgar. Li Ang's face was calm, he thought for a while, and said. If it's just Berry's bet, it's useless to him at all. His berry, I am afraid that the yellow monkey will not be able to keep up. For something like berry, he can't spend all his money, so why use berry as a bet? What's more, he knew in his heart that he would win. No matter how you say it, you have to pit the yellow monkey. You lost, resign as general and come to help me. How about it? The corners of Li Ang's mouth were slightly raised, looking at the yellow monkey, said. Immediately, Huang Yuan took 2 steps back, and said in surprise, what's the situation? Is it such a big bet? If you lose, what will you do? Resign as general. This is really too important for him. Although he did not dare to agree to this, it did not hinder him. He wanted to know what the benefits would be after winning. I give you 2 choices. First, if you win, I can give you 10 billion bells, so you can spend more than 10 lifetimes. Second, I will help you for 3 years. Chapter 800 _ take a good look and learn. NLT, 43 and GT. I give you 2 choices. First, if you win, I can give you 10 billion bells, so you can spend more than 10 lifetimes. Second, I will help you for 3 years. Li Ang stretched out 2 fingers and said with a smile. It's incredible. Kazuna's throat was dry, and he almost agreed. 10 billion bellies. This amount of berry is indeed very large. Especially the latter choice, let Li Ang do things for him for 3 years. You must know, who does not know the terrifying strength of this monster, Li Ang. If he can make this monster do things for him, then he is not so simple as a general. At least, his power will be higher than that of the marshal. Even the commander-in-chief of the world government has to be humbled by him. Is the stake too high? Kizaru looked at Li Ang weakly and asked. He still didn't dare to agree to this big gamble. In short, he was cowardly. Big? I don't think so. Of course, if you don't dare, it's not impossible to change the bet. Well, take one thing as a bet. I won, and you did one thing for me. I lost, the same price. What do you think? Li Ang touched his chin and said slowly. It is possible. Kazuna nodded, thought for a while, but did not raise any objection. If it was just one thing, then naturally he would not have any objections. Then wait and see, the result of the battle between the two. Li Ang looked at the battle between Akainu and Aokiji in front of his eyes and said. Mr. Li Ang, you can't get in the way. Kizaru was a little suspicious, but he was still worried about Li Ang. The opponent's means are simply impossible to guard against, and he certainly can't see whether the opponent has made a move. It's just a small bet, I won't be reduced to this point. Besides, I really think I value one of your things. Li Ang glanced at Huang Yuan and said lightly. This made the old yellow monkey blushed, coughed dryly, and did not speak any more. In fact, he treated the belly of a gentleman with the heart of a villain. Take a good look, as a general, study hard. 500 inches. The corners of Li Ang's mouth moved slightly, and he looked ahead. The yellow monkey was angry, but he didn't dare to say a word. He had to admit that the battle between Aokiji and Akainu really made his heart skip a beat. Boom! A loud bang. The green pheasant was forced back more than 10 meters, and there was no scar on his body, but his hands were constantly shaking. Obviously, Akainu's terrifying blow brought him a very powerful impact, causing his hands to tremble uncontrollably. The scorching temperature of the magma made the ice cubes on Aokiji's body almost evaporate. It's tricky. Aokiji's eyelids twitched, thinking to himself. If it weren't for his good tactics, I'm afraid, he's already injured now. Akainu became more and more brave in battle, completely unafraid of his fruit ability. In this way, he fell directly into a disadvantage. At the beginning, he could still launch unexpected attacks, but now that Akainu is prepared, these unexpected attacks will not have much effect. Kill. Akainu held a mass of magma in both hands and slammed it towards Akainu's position. Boom. On the ground, a huge pit appeared, and a cloud of black smoke rose up. The earth cracked open, the surrounding area was burned black by magma, and the temperature rose sharply. The surrounding ice cubes were also melted into water, and quickly evaporated by the terrifying temperature.